Hello and welcome to Music Monday 2 Live. Okay, so in this, I just kind of talk about music, and I kind of talk about everything that's having to do with music. So whether it's creating music, which I'm a beginner at, or playing music, which I'm still a beginner at, I want to kind of just go over topics and show things that have interested me and things that I've learned because I've learned a whole lot. And I've mostly just kind of been focusing on music theory aspects. And with that, now when I kind of pick up an instrument or look at music in general or compositions of music, a lot more things are making sense to me. So it's really cool, and I want to share a lot of things. I wrote some notes about some things I'm going to talk about, and I'm also going to continue with this little like piano piece thing that's kind of just mainly a practice on music theory and a way for me to actually show you uh, topics that I can teach, so then you can actually see what's going on and experience it basically. So here's some of the things that I wrote down. Let's see, I talked about dominant chord function in the leading tone. Okay, well, let's just go here. Here's my song I was talking about in the last video. And I guess what I was going to do was show, the last thing that I was doing, the last piece of when I was writing. If you notice, there's inconsistencies in the piece, and this is what I want to kind of touch on. Is I actually went in the more modern version and I kind of changed some things up, so I kind of want to show you a comparison of that. And to do that, I'm simply I'll just do print screen, and then I'll go into Paint, and I'll just basically crop this. That's good enough. And that should work just fine. Okay, so now we're looking at this. Oh, where'd it go? Okay, so now we're looking at this. And what did I type? Okay. And let's kind of just look at what's going on here. So as you can see, it also, with the stuff that I added, it made it look like it's longer down a line, but it's just because of certain things that I added. So let's start in the very beginning. Not much changed on the top, just a tie here and a tie there. And then what I mainly focused on, what I want to talk about, is the consistencies going from one part to the other part. So in the beginning here, to my ears, something was a little off, because on the bass line, we had a quarter note, we had 2/8 notes, so dun, 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 and then we had another quarter note, and then another quarter note, so dun, 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 and then we, over here, as you can see, we had one quarter note, and then the rest were eighth notes. So to my ears, something's right off the bat was the very beginning of the song. It's trying to establish that it's music, that it's a song, that it has a sort of melody to it, a character to it, and that was kind of like something that seemed a little off to me and didn't really seem like it had like a nice character to it, like a smooth character to it. It just seemed a little maybe lumpy or something is how I'd explain it. So I made a little more consistent here to where I have a quarter note, and then I have 4/8 notes and another quarter note, and if you look at the next line in the bass note, I have the same thing. So that's what I changed. And then basically in the treble line, it's the same thing, and so is right here in the treble line. Moving forward, it looks like I didn't really change anything here, but moving over here, I did add a note here. And I was going, basically when you're going using these notes that are in the chord, as I was explaining in the last video, is you can also see when it's a chord when it's going from line to line to line to line, or space, 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 space. Let me actually do this. I was going to promise my live streams will get better as I do this. Okay. So I'm actually just gonna do one less, and then I'll do that. Okay, let's apply. Now it's a lot bigger. The problem the last video when I looked at it, I was like, oh geez, it's kind of small, and it's kind of just small already for me to even read it. So now it's easier for me to read it, easier for you to read it. Okay, so you see right here, I also added some little bit of articulation here, the tenuto, I believe it's called. It's not going to tell me. Oh, maybe it's off here. Okay, also known as a kind of like a legato accent. Basically, it's going to hold the note out its full length. And then, let me actually do this. Put this up here. This thing's kind of cool. It's called desk pins. It's just something you download online and you pin stuff. So now whenever I click it, stuff, it's not going to mess that up. Okay. So, well, now we're doing, oh, jeez, okay. Okay, let's go quick. Okay, here we are. This I'm learning. I'm learning still. Okay. But, okay, here we are. Just kind of want to go through some topics in the piece, touch on some stuff. That's what this Music Monday's about. It's kind of just laid back. Let's talk about some things, okay? So you can tell when it's a chord, when it's going from line to line to line. So those three notes, line, 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 are a chord, okay? And if you actually look at the original, I did just use the chord itself, and that's what this is right here. Okay, it's our fourth measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I changed was this note, which is not in the chord, but it's still in our key. So it's known as a passing note because it's passing from chord tones, and it kind of gives you a certain sound to it. And I also changed under here on the bass line in the beginning, I also did a passing note as well. So that gives it a nicer sound. Let's listen to how it sounds now. Kind of different, but I like it. And the thing is, as I can kind of edit it and make it a little different on top of it, and I'm noticing that it's cool to, and it sounds good to kind of add certain things that are kind of playing off one another, which is always the idea, but in a way to where I'm leaving certain things that are kind of similar. I'm doing things that are kind of similar in one line than I am on the next line. So it's kind of adding a little bit of, I guess, familiarity, and it's kind of just making it sound in my ears a little more musical how I want it to. A little more like not confusing and oblong, more just like a musical piece, I guess. Not improv, more of like a written piece sound is what I'm thinking. So yeah, it's a little interesting, and now I kind of want to talk about some people. Okay, so who are some people that have really taught me a lot of stuff, and I'm going to talk about probably the top people in the beginning, and then talk about some other people later down the road that are probably, once you listen to the people at the top, then the people at the bottom, you could listen to them more and it'll make more sense, because they're probably going to take stuff and make it a little more complex. But the people at the top also probably still have the complex ideas, but they also have simple stuff, and they're really good at breaking things down and explaining things more slow so you can actually comprehend it. Well, some of these people don't always do that. Well, I'll explain that. Okay, so Music Matters, Signals, Music Studio, Living Pianos, Videos. I would say those are some really good ones, especially, let me actually talk about the main ones that I've learned from probably. Adam Neely, Ben Levin, Signals Music Studio, and Music Matters. I would say Music Matters and Signals Music Studio be at the top, probably Music Matters at the very top, and then Signals Music Studio gave me the music map and then taught me a bunch of stuff, and from there I went off on a lot of other channels and saw a lot of other things. So there's also Adam Neely's interesting. A lot of his videos though, it'll be like a certain topic you'll research, and he'll talk about it kind of briefly, and then the rest of the video he'll talk about a bunch of other stuff. So it's good, you learn a lot of stuff. But if you went for that one topic, it's going to give you a very brief touch on it. So it's good, and but not if you're really looking for a full depth of certain topics most of the time. Ben Levin, on the other hand, is super interesting and inspiring. He makes like a bunch of music. He makes crazy animations and stuff like that, and like mind-blowing, trippy video animation combos and stuff like that. And since he's like a composer, so he composes music that goes with his visuals, and he even has like things on his channel where he shows you how to make animations with your music and stuff like that. He's super cool, but he also has basic things like music theory. But everyone teaches it differently, basically, which is interesting. It's like everyone taught it differently, I think. Ben Levin has some very interesting ways of teaching, and so does Music Matters. So then there's also 12 Tone, which is interesting. He like writes a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper, and a lot of it's like really fast paced, so I tend to pause the video super frequently and write stuff down, and that's good. And then Living Piano Studios is like the happiest, most optimistic music teacher, piano playing guy that you'll be able to encounter, I'm pretty sure. He's just like, he's super laid back when he's teaching, but he has a big smile on his face, and he'll teach certain videos and you'll just be like, wow, this guy is just so happy just to teach this, and it's good to see, and it's inspiring. It's like, wow, music must make him happy, or he's just really happy, probably both. David Bruce, composer, super interesting. He does a lot of things to where like I actually found out about a lot of these people through this guy. Is he did certain things to where he would invite YouTubers, and I don't think it was always in person, but it was just he'd invite this idea where he'd get YouTubers together and he'd give them an idea, and one was like a piece for an orchestra, and they would write pieces for an orchestra, and then the orchestra would play it, and then it was cool to see everyone's idea of what they wanted to write, and then cool to show how like maybe even a lot of people haven't played certain instruments, but they know what they sound like, and they wrote parts for them and stuff like that, and it sounded really good. And it was an interesting, mind-opening concept. There's also Tentacruel, I found out from David Bruce, Adam Neely, Ben Levin, and then I knew about Signals Music Studio, but he was actually on there too, which is really cool to see. Then there's Rick Beato, which I recently started watching, and he goes like to stuff that is kind of like a little more next level of like the basic stuff, at least for me, and it's really cool to see all that, because like, whoa, this guy's taking everything above and beyond. And he also has videos, I think, on the simple stuff, but his videos are compact. He throws in a lot of information in one video, which I love. There's also the Jacob Collier, which is interesting to watch him because he has a lot of interesting concepts about harmony and stuff like that, and then just opens your mind to want to research stuff like that. And then when you start familiarizing yourself with a lot of these ideas about harmony and just like the Overtone Series, stuff like that, that you get a whole new viewpoint on music and how anything essentially could potentially be music or an instrument, and then even like produce pitches of notes. Not everything, but certain things. It's an interesting thing to grasp. And then there's George Collier, which is, I guess, not related, but they have the same last name. And this guy does cool stuff. He does like transcriptions of music stuff on his. He'll get like certain videos of people playing music, and he'll actually have the written music below it. And I guess he just does it from listening to it. So it's really impressive that people could do that. And then there's this Andrew Huang guy. I've just seen some. I don't know if I pronounce his name right. I've seen a good amount of his stuff, some of it, and he's pretty good. And then this David Bennett guy, I've seen a few of this guy's stuff, and he has a few really good videos that I've seen. I don't know, probably more than just a few good videos though. Yeah. So I'm here at the C major scale, and I kind of want to add some to this piece. I like it. Okay. It's interesting. So let's look at the last note or chord that I did. Okay. So G, and then I have D and yeah, okay. So I have that G chord right there, and now from a G, it's a G sharp chord actually. So it's this right here, and it's kind of like a weird sound because it is that diminished. So I really don't know what to add to this right now, so I'm just gonna talk about some more stuff. Okay, some more stuff I kind of want to talk about, which I think is interesting, is like familiarizing yourself with music more and the rhythm and the beat of songs just from listening to your favorite songs, which is super cool. I've realized this recently, that you can just listen to your favorite songs and you can break down the instruments that are playing and the rhythm and the beat, which I never did before, which is just a really interesting thing to have that change of viewpoint about a song, to where now when I hear a song, I hear all the instruments, I hear the rhythm that's going, the beat and everything, and it's definitely a different experience. So a lot of ways I want to talk about how to do that. So there's audiation, which is simply things like repeating vocals or repeating lines of music, like you're humming a certain part of a song or whistling or anything like that, or like a certain beat or anything to like the song. So you start getting it in your mind, and you start kind of just saying it out loud, whether it's any, even the whole song. You could even kind of just think about, you could whistle certain parts of your song, you could sing certain parts, and an easy way to remember that is to kind of echo. So you have your song playing, and the the person will be saying something and you'll be echoing their voice. I don't know if you've heard it in a song doing this, but it's really easy. So it's like they'll say something and 2 seconds later you'll say the same thing, and if they keep saying stuff you'll just kind of be 2 seconds after them, but you'll hear what they're saying and you'll say it too. And then the next time you listen to the song, it's like it's already in your head. So that's a really cool way to learn vocals, but that also goes with like if you're thinking about the actual melody of the song or a complex solo. So I found this super interesting is you can listen to like a real complex solo and you can in your mind hear these notes and then kind of say them out loud or whistle them, and there'll be like a certain part dun 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 dun, and if you just even like sing that like dun 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 dun, then you'll hear it the next time and it'll just be like, oh yeah, like you're familiar with that, you know it. And on top of that, a lot of times it's like kind of engraved in you, so that's cool. Audiation. And then I think one thing that's interesting about just this, I'm just going to be talking about kind of analyzing songs and stuff like that, because you can learn a lot just from analyzing songs. So there's also like looking for cues in a song when people are going to start singing or doing like a solo. So you'll notice a lot right before someone will start singing, a lot of times you'll hear like a little drum fill or something. So a drum fill is like you'll hear a consistent drum pattern like a dun 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 dun, then all of a sudden you hear like a da 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 da, and you'll hear like, you know, kind of the drum filling more of that space there instead of that dun 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 dun. It's like dun 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 dun. They do some more stuff. They add some more notes in there, okay, or some more hits in there. So a lot of times you hear that. There's also other things like you'll hear sometimes it'll get real quiet and then you'll hear like one loud drum note or something. And a lot of these cues, if you're actually listening to a song and you're not like trying to repeat the lyrics, but you're just listening to certain parts, you'll be like, oh, it sounds like they're gonna start singing. Then they start singing, and you can start noticing these things. And if you are like a musician, and if you think one day like you want to make music and stuff, which I do, this has been a really good way of me to even like I'm working a lot, and I can be listening to my favorite songs, and I can just sit there and I can go, okay, oh, there's the cue for when they're doing a guitar solo. That's really interesting, and you can kind of pick up on how they did it, and you can get ideas from it. But then you can also familiarize yourself with when that's going to happen. If you want to do a cover of the song, whatever, I think it's just a good way to familiarize yourself with music more. And then also hearing the actual beats of a song, which for me, most of my music and most of the music I hear, even on the radio, it is mostly common time, which is called common time because it's very common, which is a 4/4 pattern, which means 4 quarter notes or 4 beats. So bump, 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 bump. And that even 4 beats, something about it is very easy for us to grasp as music. So we hear those 4 beats and we know it's music right off the bat. I mean, you can just get something, you can hit it 4 times repeating, focus on that pattern of 4, and you can build a song off it really easy. And so basically hearing the beats of a song, I feel like a really good way to do that is familiarizing yourself with the one beat of a song. So like when the beats kind of start and then when it ends and merges to the beginning one, and then that's probably like the first step. And then from there it's finding probably the next one would either be like the 3, or let's say let's explain it like this. A lot of times if you're listening to music that has 4 beats, the 4/4, you're either gonna have a sort of downbeat on your 1 and your 3. It's not always like that, so don't explain like that. This is kind of just how it normally is. But it's basically you're either gonna have like a stronger emphasis on your 1 and your 3. So it's gonna be strong, not as strong, strong, not as strong. Those are your four beats. And then the other way is like a lot of jazz does stuff like this. Not always, but a lot of times you have it's sort of like a a beat on your 2 and 4, and a lot of times it's more like an upbeat. So you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's a completely different feeling to the song. And it's interesting how just that underlying aspect of a song can do so much. And I think the like a really cool thing about this Music Monday is I'm going to be showing like a lot of these people on YouTube teach some really complex stuff, but they're not teaching the very basic level stuff. So when people aren't familiar with that basic level stuff, it's like, well, how do you get there? And the Music Mondays definitely aren't just going to be like a ticket to get there, but my YouTube channel hopefully will be. And it's going to go over, in order, topics that will lead anyone who watches all of them and goes over notes. And I want to also showing a good way to go over notes in this video. But basically you watch the videos and you take notes, and I'm pretty sure that anyone who does that will be able to familiarize themselves with music, write chords, chord progressions, which are songs, do modulating, changed keys, basically create songs that they like. And with this definitely translates into things like electronic music, unless you're like solely only trying to do bass music, then maybe all this stuff will not apply to that. But I'm not too familiar with the making of it, but just the concept of doing solely bass stuff with the bass doesn't seem like, okay, you probably don't need to know all this stuff. But if you did, that'd be interesting to, with the bass, harmonize and stuff, I guess. But okay, let's go into more of some other stuff. Okay, so I went over echoing, and then I wrote down how similar music and language are, and that when you and this is like a certain word. Okay, sometimes you'll say a word, and it's not a word that actually exists, but it's like a part of one. So let me think of one. It's kind of like, it's maybe not using bad grammar, but it's using grammar that maybe doesn't exist, or maybe that people don't generally use. So I can't think of the best example, but it'd be like there's a word that exists, and you're adding like a ending, like a suffix or something to it, and people go, that's not a real word, but they know exactly what you mean when you say it. And it's like, well, why is it not a word then? Isn't that what words are? Didn't we create these words to just express, certain things? So then I kind of went on to say that someone doesn't play like a certain note or notes together and say like, that's not a note. And I don't know if I wrote that and I was like, that might not like make all that much sense to everyone, but maybe it will. But I thought that was an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, it's kind of the fact that we should be able to express things. We should be able to use music and language as a way of expression, and there shouldn't be people saying that's not music and that's not language. I guess that's kind of what I meant more when I wrote it, and that's kind of where I'm going with it. Actually, is a good thing. So certain people say rap music, oh, that's not music or whatever. Well, it's definitely music, or anything, any type of music that people call music. There's a reason why they call it music, and music has so much history to it, and it's so different in so many cultures. And to say that something's not music is actually sort of ignorant, and I try not to say it. Hopefully I haven't said it. Oh, and this is interesting. Solfege. So solfege or solfeggio, there's two types. There's fixed solfege, and then there's movable solfege. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, movable. And basically that's your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And those are just it starts on do and it ends on do. And there's 8 there. So that is your 8 notes that are in like your major scale. So you have, let's start with C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Because I don't know if you've heard me talk about it before, but I talk about it quite often, and it's that the C major scale doesn't have any flats or sharps. So it's, as a beginner especially, it's really good to work with. So if you have those notes and you just have your C major scale, which is just C through C going up the alphabet, and at G it repeats. So we have Do as our 1, Re as our 2, Mi as our 3, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do, etc. And it's interesting to know that, because you can voice that either if you're doing your guitar, or if you know your major scale, your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then you also know, essentially the Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do if you're doing fixed solfege, and if you're playing in the key, if it's like a major key, if you're playing the major scale. Basically, it's just that it's interesting. I was watching a video and some guy was saying you need to learn Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do on your guitar, and he was showing, and I kind of scratched my head and I thought, well, do people, I wish people understood that it's simply the scale, and if it's fixed solfeggio, it's only the C major scale. That's what fixed solfeggio is. It's only the C major scale, so anything else is off of that. And then there's also chromatics to Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. And I forget exactly which one it is, but in the middle of those, so you have your B and your E don't have sharps, so they don't have a certain one in the middle, but the other ones do. So let me... It's called the... solfeggio notes, solfege or solfeggio. And what I'm saying is you can get, instead of the 7 notes, there's also the 12 of them, which is this. It's a little, the picture they're showing is a little blurrier. You see it's Do, D, Re, Re, Mi, Fa, Fi. So each sharp is represented by one set, and then as you're they show it as now descending, but when you're using your flats, now you have a different set of variations in between. I found that very interesting. I didn't know that till I was watching a one of those Living Pianos videos. Then, that's funny. I guess, well, I wrote down my playlist, and I talk about the importance of writing notes, and a good way that I found how to write notes and how important I think it is. So I definitely wanted to go into my YouTube channel for one thing, and I don't know if anyone knows about this, but I have a different channel called Music Man. And in this, I basically just make playlists, and I save songs, like, probably daily. Like, all the time when I'm listening to a song, I'm always using YouTube, and I just save songs to my playlists. So, there's my liked, but I can't unprivate my liked video playlist, which sucks, because it has 4,000 videos. Whoa. Okay, so, I got, like, next level music stuff, which I recently added, but I have actual playlists for music that are actually, some of them have quite a lot in there. So I have Merle Sanders, and I got one that has music theory. I added a bunch of stuff to this now. This one did not have so much stuff before. I click on it, there's actually more of them. I have one that is composing, so it's more videos that are centered around actually, like, okay, I want to take this knowledge that I have and I actually want to write a song with it now, and here's the stuff that you can learn to do that. And maybe you're thinking, well, have I written songs? Well, I'm learning, how to. So I'm just learning more and more. My goal is that I want to write some songs that when I release them are really good, and are like things that I'm happy with, and not just in my eyes at like a basic level that I'm gonna release something that I'm actually like, this is really good. So I want to learn a lot. That's what I'm doing, and with that I'm keeping track of what I'm learning, and it's mostly so other people can click on these videos and find them, because I've already watched most of these videos. A lot of it, a lot of them I have saved, but a lot of it I'm saving. Okay, let me rephrase it. A lot of these videos I'm saving for myself, but the reason why I'm saving a ton of these videos I've already watched on here is because I want other people to see them and learn from them. Because there's a lot of stuff to learn about music, and it's not always easy finding a source. And the thing is, when you go through my channel, you go through these playlists and stuff, you can find a lot of different sources. And you can also just find a lot of different videos. Like if you go through the bottom more, you're probably going to see stuff more towards the basic level. And then and then if you go towards the top, stuff that's getting, stemming from there. So could probably really help people out. There's also a lot of music on here. I did talk about the music theory one, and then I also have one that's specifically guitar. I also have one that's specifically piano. So things that I find like, okay, this is very important for guitar and piano, then I save it on there. And there's that. So I'll talk about taking notes and why it's so important. So this maybe not like the most fun topic that most people maybe love talking about, but it's the fact that taking notes is the gateway to remembering what you actually watched. So you watch some, and let's talk about my experience. Sometimes I'll watch a video, I'll watch it 3 times, and each of those 3 times it makes sense. I get it, but then I just don't remember it, and I'm like, okay, like I just don't remember it. And then I write it down, and then I remember it right then and there that one time. And then there's certain topics that are kind of confusing. They make that much sense. So what I found is, okay, you write them down, and then you stare at them, and you go, why doesn't it make sense? You wrote down, the person explains to you, okay, do this, blah, blah, blah. So you have it all written down, and you can stare at it. You can go, how does this not make sense? And how can I make sense of it? And I've done this too many times. And a lot of times how it starts is you sit there and it physically in your head you go, maybe they're teaching it wrong, or something. Maybe they made a mistake. This doesn't make any sense. I'm thinking, all my gears are turning. This makes no sense. And then at a certain point, sometimes you'll actually have to walk away from it. It'll click later. Sometimes it'll happen while you're staring at it. But it's the fact that you wrote it down. You really put a lot of thought into it. Your gears were really grinding. So all of a sudden it clicks. You go, oh my gosh. And a lot of times, here's the thing. The thought process when it clicks is normally, oh my god, it's that simple. It's really that simple. And that's normally what I've found, because it's normally I'm thinking so hard about something. How does that make any sense? And then I just, and this is sometimes how it happens too, I go, oh, it just does make sense. I just don't have to think about it so hard. I'm thinking about it so hard that it's not making sense. That if I just relax a little bit and just think a little more relaxed, it's like, okay, it actually makes sense. It's just really simple, and music's very weird. So one example of that, I think this is kind of interesting. So I'm just gonna do a short example for this one, because this is complex. This is on the Rick Beato's channel, and this was really cool. So he's saying if you get any major scale pattern and you flat the third, then you have a melodic minor. And I was like, a melodic minor. And I was like, what? How does that make any sense? So then I wrote down the scale pattern of, I guess I'll just show you what I did. So I did A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then I thought, okay, so we're working with the harmonic minor. So if we have a harmonic minor, the A minor scale is just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay? A, B, C, D, F, G, no flats, no sharps. A minor. So I was thinking, okay, so if it's the melodic, you flat the, or if it's melodic, you sharp the 6 and 7. So we have our 6 and 7 sharped. And with that I go, okay, so that's interesting. And then if we look at that pattern right there, we basically, yeah, that's good right there. We have a pattern of whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay, so you have those 4 holes. And I go, okay, so now let's take the C major scale, which is, and I did the A minor, so now I'm doing the C major scale. So that's, oh geez, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, back to C. I guess I'll just do the C at the end, because it makes sense to me when I do that. So same thing, I'll number them. So I was thinking, and here's my 8. So I guess I'll put that there too. Okay. All right. So now we have the same thing. We have our C major scale, and then we have this, and then they said you flat the 3rd, and then that's how you get a melodic minor. And my brain was just like exploding when I looked at this, and I'm like, what? And okay, here's what I did too. And the funniest thing was I even wrote this down. And I was like, well, I see how they're the same. So then I have my whole, half, whole, 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 half, which brings me back. So if you actually basically count everything, which I counted multiple times, so unless I made a mistake, like it's this is what it is, okay? And this is what he's teaching. So I was like, this pattern is whole, half, 4 holes, and then a half. This is whole, half, 4 holes, and a half. They're the exact same pattern. And I'm like, but how does this make any sense? And then my brain wanted to explode. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk away from this for a sec and just not think about it. And then I started thinking about the circle of fifths randomly. Then I go, well, if I am at the circle of fifths, and then I go, let's take the, the C major scale. So, geez, I'm having a brain fart. Is that what I did? Let's think. I was thinking if we have the C major scale, and then I flat the 3rd, and then I was thinking, okay, so what I did before was I did the A minor scale, okay, which contained all those notes. So I was thinking what happens next if I take, let's say, the G major scale, okay, which has only, or actually I'll do this. I'll do that's what I was thinking. So let's do, yes. I was looking at the circle of fifths, which I just did again. I recommend putting it somewhere if you're trying to learn this stuff. Circle of fifths really good. So I was looking at A major, which I was thinking exactly. Okay, so this is what it is. You see, even my brain had to think here. So I was thinking, okay, so if I just wrote down A minor, which had no flats or no sharps, okay, and then I literally just wrote down the melodic version, and it's this pattern, okay? That's all I did. And then I thought, okay, well then what I did here is I got my major scale and I plugged in the thing. So now, let's see what happens, because he was saying if I get any major scale, and if I just do the flat 3rd, then that's how I get the melodic minor. So I thought, wait a second, I think this is what he means. Because they don't, like Rick Beato, he's great, but he doesn't explain a lot. So I'm sitting there and my brain has to think a lot, and I think that's probably a good thing. But someone's like, it's not explained. So I think, okay, what if I take A major, okay? So what's A major? It is, if you go around the circle of fifths, it is from C, you go C, you go up a 5th, So if a good way to think about the circle of fifths is actually knowing your circle of thirds, which I explained on the last video. So circle of thirds is every good band deserves fans and cash. How do you use that for the circle of fifths? Well, essentially this is how. When you're doing a every good band, you're building a 1, 3, and a 5. Okay? Because you're doing 2 thirds on top of each other. I explained that in the last video if that's a little confusing. If you just also look up triads and how they work, it'll make sense. So that's what we're doing with the circle of thirds, is we're building triads of thirds. So we're doing our every good band. So if we take that and we take any sort of note, we start on C normally for the circle of fifths. So you go, C is normally your starting point, and it just kind of makes sense to do that. And we're going to go up, I'll just explain like this. We're just going to go up fifths, okay? So we're going to do C. Cash, C is cash. So cash is the very end, and then it starts at every good again. Okay, so cash, every good. So our next one is G. That's our second. Good bands deserve, D. Okay, so from C, now we're at our third, which also has 2 sharps now, because C has no sharps. Remember, there's no sharps. So there's no sharps in C. So now our second one has 1 sharp. Third one has 2 sharps, because C has none. Okay, so now we go from our fourth one. So we went cash, every good bands deserve fans, and. So that's how we get our A, and this is our A major. We're going through the major notes in this. And you can do the circle of fifths also in your minor notes, but we're talking about major right now. So now we have A. And as I was saying, our last one had the 2 sharps, and this one has our 3 sharps. And, I want to just simply go over this. I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm not actually showing the circle of fifths right now. But, the best thing I could do is actually show you what I'm talking about. Funny me. Okay, so let's look up the circle of fifths, and as it's loading. So yeah, we're at A major right now, which has our 3 sharps. So if we look at it, this is the exact one that's hanging on my wall. It's hilarious. Okay, so we went from C, cash, every good bands deserve fans, and. So you see, when you're going up thirds, you're just going up 1. When you're going up fifths, you're going up 2 of them. So that's what you do. So we just went up the fifths. We started here. As we went here, we just had 1 sharp. We had 2 sharps. We had 3 sharps. How do you know what sharps those are? Well, if you want to take the long route, you could always go each note and go 1 back. So you're looking at G, F, D, E, A, G. That's as simple as it is. And they each add on each other. So now you have F, C, G. Okay, and you have, now when you're in the key of A, those 3 sharps, they add on each other. So now you have F, C, and G represented. That's the key of A major. Gives you the sound of A major. Okay? So how is the fast way to do that? Well, the fast way to do that is recognizing this pattern. It is my caps here. Bead, GCF, is probably the good thing to memorize first, but that's actually the circle of flats, because remember I said F, C, G. So that backwards is F, C, G, and I call it Dabe to remember it, because that's what it's kind of like. Oh, I didn't write the D. F, C, G, oh my golly, Dabe. Okay, so you see F, C, G, Dabe, or bead, GCF. Kind of like what someone told me is they said just remember the word bead and then greatest common factor. And I was like, okay, well, I remember that. So there's that. That stuck it in my brain. And so there's that. Now we have A major. 3 sharps. So what are those 3 sharps? We just said F, C, and G. Okay? F, C, G, F, C, G, F, C, G. Okay? Now, why don't I just open both at the same time? Okay. So now I have F, C, G. Whoa. Well, I guess it was on here. That's funny. Okay. And then we're going to take that A major scale. Now we're going to write it out with that new found knowledge of the circle of fifths. So now we're going to say, okay, we want the A major scale. So I like just writing out, if we're doing a scale that has the 7 letters, so we just say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it goes back to A. So that's your 8, that's your octave. So you go, okay. So now from those 8 letters, now I kind of want to plug in that F, C, G. Let's label this the F, C, G thing. So this is called the order of flats. So we're not working with flats right now. And I started with sharps. I recommend doing whichever one makes more sense to you. To me, sharps make more sense to me because it's the note before, or it's the note, it's the note after the other note. So you have A sharp. You have B, you don't have a sharp. You have C, then you have C sharp. And something about that, it's probably because it's the first one I learned, but it makes, it's more fluent and more fluid, and it's easier and faster for me to do that than normally if I'm working with flats, which is you have your A flat, A, then you have your B flat, B, no C flat, D flat, D, E flat, etc. So it's kind of, I recommend focusing on sharps. And the thing is, there's something that's called your enharmonics. Oops. Enharmonics. Okay, so your enharmonics basically means if you're looking at one thing, it's the same thing as another thing. So what's an example of that? We look at A sharp and B flat. So if you look at a piano, you have your A note and you have your B note. And you have one note in the middle of that. And that note is A sharp and it's B flat. So it's your enharmonics. And you have a lot of things about enharmonics in music. It's a good thing to know about that you can have 2 different names for one thing and they're the same thing, and it goes pretty deep. So it's good to familiarize yourself with enharmonics. So we have our order of sharps is what we're talking about. So we had 3 sharps because we went from C, we progressed, we did that thing, went to our 4th one. C didn't have any, so we have 3 sharps. So with those 3 sharps, I'm just gonna check if I'm in the frame. Okay? So now with those 3 sharps, we're gonna fill in the F, C, G. So first one would just be C. Okay, F, C, G, F, C, G, F, C, G. So normally that's going on in my head. I'm saying F, C, G. There we go. Very simple. So now we have our A major scale pattern. Basically, you could, be anywhere, and you could just think, what's an A major scale? And, after a while of working with this stuff, I'm assuming that I'm just going to remember what the sharps are. But a way to basically get there from scratch and to really kind of know the stuff inside and out, in my opinion, is to know about how to create it. So, we created that just from understanding things. We just took the letters without sharps, we applied our order of sharps and the knowledge of circle of fifths and key signature, bam. Now we have A major scale, and what was I saying? Okay, we flat the 3rd. That's how we get our melodic minor. Let's label these. So this is our melodic minor, and this is our melodic minor. My brain was exploding over it. And then this is our A major, but we flat the 3rd. Boom. Do you see the similarity now? Those are now the same exact thing. How did I get this though? If you remember, I took the A minor scale, which was A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So it's no sharps, no flats. And then from there, I just said, oh, it's a melodic. So melodic minor, all you have to remember is you just get your 6 and your 7 and you make them sharp no matter where you're at. And since a minor doesn't have any flats or sharps, you're not taking a flat note and sharpening. You're not taking this you're taking the regular note and you're making it sharp. So it's an easy beginner thing to work with, especially if you want to look at it and visualize it. Okay, so we have those. That's how I got that. And how I got this was I just took A major and I flattened the third. So it's like, whoa, that's a completely different way to get to the same thing, but it helps you understand things more, because you start thinking about the modes and stuff of it more, and how those are arranged if you're familiar with that. So there's that. What is something else I could talk about? I really want to talk about the Overtone Series, which I find really interesting. So I'll just save that. It's a good note. I'll call it text. Sure. I'll call it KY. Okay. Wait, so you can't save it there? Okay, you know what? Sacrifice it for the sake of the video. I mean, that's simple. Okay. So I did that. Now we have the C major. Okay. I want to talk about Overtone Series, which I find super interesting. I started like writing a bunch of stuff about it, and essentially it's the fact that every note exists in every note. What do I mean by that? It's the fact that when you play any one note, you're not just hearing that one note. If you did, it would sound different. It probably would sound a lot more, I would call it, I guess, dry, or it's hard to kind of explain. The harmonics of a note. I'm not talking about getting one note and harmonizing with another. I'm talking about the harmonics of one note. So you play one note, and there's harmonics of that. Very interesting. Okay? So again, I'm going to pull this out. Oh, I pinned that one. Okay, so like writing notes and stuff like that. I guess this is where I'll go with this. I started off writing notes. If you see my original YouTube videos, which I'll probably post a lot more like this still, but I'm just writing stuff down on pieces of paper, blank piece of paper. I liked it completely blank, no lines, so I could write whatever I want as big as I want, you know. And then I was like, this is great, but it's not as efficient as I want. So, you know, it's like a kind of no-brainer. But I was like, you know, why don't I just start typing a lot of this stuff, and then everything got a lot quicker, and I ended up being able to watch a video and write down the notes a lot quicker. So, I'll talk about the Overtone Series. So, I guess I'll just say, imagine I was watching one of my videos, and I was like, okay, you know, I kind of want to write some of this information down that I'm hearing. So, what I essentially do is I just watch part of the video, and, you know, let's say the video's on the Overtone Series. Let's say we're watching a YouTube video, okay? Let's go to my yeah, let's go to that. That's cool. Okay. So we have let's see where this is. Okay. What was that covering? Oh God. Was I doing it the whole time? I don't know. You know? No, it's not. Okay. So. Boom. Okay, that actually lines up perfectly. That's weird. Taking notes of a video, and let's say we're doing Overtone Series. You know, I would just label it a certain thing, and then I normally would, if it's a very complex video, I would probably watch like a portion of it or the video first, and then watch it a second time and write the notes, or vice versa. I would write a bunch of notes as I'm watching it, and then as I'm done watching it, I would watch it a second time. And some of the stuff, like you write it down, and you just like can't stop thinking about it. And the music is so interesting. There's so much to think about. So the Overtone Series, what happens? I love C. We all love C, right? Okay. Talk about C major. There's no flats or sharps. Okay, so C major. You play a C note. You know, you get like a. I'll get my piano. I'll play a super high C. You play a C. Okay. You're not just hearing C. What else are you hearing though? Well, first of all, you're just hearing another C note higher up. And a way to actually hear this is super interesting. You play your lower C and you hit your C note on a piano and you let it kind of ring. And as it's ringing, you strike down the C that's higher pitch, that's one octave above that, really hard. And what happens is as the lower C is ringing, so you initially hit the lower one hard too, but it's ringing. So as it's ringing, what's happening is the harmonics are ringing out, and you're hitting the note dun, and as it's doing that, when you strike the other note that's an octave above it really hard, if you listen carefully, you'll hear the notes intersect. But why are they intersecting if they're different notes? And that's because you're hearing the harmonics intersect. And that's a good way to familiarize yourself with it. So the first harmonics after a note, like the next one after it, they're all quieter. They're all quieter notes above the note that you're playing. And the first quieter note is, you know, the least quiet compared to all the rest. So it'd be the loudest compared to all the other ones. And that is just your octave. So C. So you play your C note. And then as it's ringing, you strike your other one. Hear them kind of mix. Okay, so you're hearing your C harmonics. Then your next one would go up a fifth. So what was I saying about the circle of thirds teaching us fifths? You go cash, every, good. So now you have your fifth right there. Your fifth is your next harmonic. And now we have two different notes. So we have a C and we have a G. And if you know the relationship of the fifth to the one in music, you know it's a very strong relationship to music. It's also called the dominant note, or if you're playing the fifth, let's say if you're playing a C chord, then you're playing a G chord, you know that would be your dominant chord and have your dominant function. Especially, let's say you're even making 7 chords, then the 1/7 chord that turns dominant is your 5. So your 5 has your dominant function, and it has that relationship to where if you end a song on like a 5, a lot of times it's that sound of, did the song end? Is it going to keep going? And sometimes it does keep going, or sometimes it ends. And the funny thing is, a lot of rock songs, they end right on the 5. They go bam, and then it ends, and it kind of works. But a lot of other music, like a lot of harmonized music, if they end on that like 5, it like builds up and it's like a dun and it's like a 5. A lot of times it's literally the feeling of, was that the end? Okay? And then if they do the 5 and then they end on the 1 after that, that's the feeling of, oh, that's the end of the song. Or it could also be the end of a certain part, or kind of like a section, comma in the music. And I guess that's all going there, but interesting here. So let's go up the next harmonic. So go up the next harmonic from G. So it's all we're playing, the C note is all we're doing. And we're talking about what other notes we're hearing above that note that make the one note C. And this is every note that exists, and it's very interesting. And what you got to realize is basically music, such an interesting thing about it is a lot of the concept that we didn't really create a lot of this stuff. Maybe we kind of perfected and edited and adjusted some of this stuff, but we found this stuff. It existed in nature. It simply just exists, and we discovered it. I find that one of the most interesting things. So let's go up from G. We have G, A, B, C. We're back at C. So now we're at our fifth or fourth harmonic, and we are back at C. So we have 4 different Cs. This is all that we have in the beginning. four different notes. 3 of them are C's, and your third one is your G. So you only have one different note. Well, then you go up there, and then you go up and you have a major third, and after the major third, I'm going to stop talking about it because technically if you look at the... Let's just talk about it first. So let's go up a major third, okay? Oh yeah, that is true actually. So we can actually do a major third and then a minor third. So our next one after we go up a fourth is our major third. So our major third is from our C, our circle of thirds, CE, cash every, and then we go up a minor third from there. So cash every, good, and okay, well, why did I just write EG if it's a minor? And this is a really good way to familiarize yourself with if something is minor or if it's major, if you're just looking at a chord. So as you're looking at C, E, G, imagine the B and the F, and imagine all the other notes. And imagine that E and F, so B and E only have sharps. This is so funny. B and E don't have sharps. Let's just say one more time. Let's start from the beginning. So we're looking at our sharps in just our chromatic scale, which is our basically what we're using in music, our notes that we have to work with. So our B and our E don't have sharps. Remember I was saying we just discovered this in nature. It's very interesting. So if you're thinking about that fact, then you go C, great, okay, D, that's so funny, C, D, E, F, G. So let's think what has sharps and what doesn't. B and E. So where do I see a B, where do I see an E, and why is this why is this prevalent? So we have an E here. Okay, so E doesn't have a sharp. So immediately in your mind, you can say that if we did have a sharp here, then we'd have the same thing as this. Okay? What is this? This is C to E. So C to E is C, D, E. It ends on an E, but since the sharp comes after the note, it doesn't matter if we end on a B or if we end on an E. On the other hand, if we start on an E, immediately after that, we don't have a sharp, so that does affect what we're counting. So you can look at any chord, and especially, this is the, let's start at the beginning level, okay? Let's always start at the beginning level, and why shoot for the stars and make your head hurt and stuff if you could just familiarize yourself with the basics, and then from there be able to go from there and look at all the complex stuff in the world and have it actually make sense because you understand it at such the basic level. And I find that's a really good way to go. So we're looking at this. We already talked about that C, D, E. Okay, we don't have any sharps. We don't have a B. We don't have an E. So immediately in our mind, we can say, okay, so from C to E, we can already just say in our mind, that's a major. Why is that a major? Because if we don't have any sharps or any flats in our notes, we're working with, the C major notes. So it's perfect. It's like I was saying, it's good beginner practice. So we have a major third between there. And then the easiest thing to remember is just, okay, so we have an E there, and it starts in the E. We don't have a sharp, so we have a minor. But to actually understand it more, you just sit through it and count it. So you have C. You don't count the C because we're going up chromatically. We have C sharp, D, D sharp, E. So it's 4, and 4 equals a major triad. And then we go E, no sharp, F, F sharp, and then we go to I messed up. We're counting chromatically. See, it's actually good to watch someone mess up, because if you catch it, then it's like really good. So we had E, don't count that. We don't have E sharp. We have F, F sharp, G. So we just have those 3 notes. So that's why it's our minor. So if you're looking at anything basically, and you can use that B and your E to your advantage. Also, if you're working with flats, use C to your F. But I was saying it's good at beginning working just with the sharps, so you're getting this whole idea of the patterns and the concepts down, and you're not just throwing a bunch of stuff in your head and saying, I need to learn this, because it gets really confusing really quickly. So let's take a different note. Let's take one that has like an E somewhere in it, okay? So let's look at our B chord. So we get bands. Let's go with our circle of thirds reference. So bands deserve fans. I don't want to write it down, or I guess, why not write it down? So, oh my god, you couldn't see that for a little bit. That's really embarrassing, but it's like, whatever. These are like my beginning, so I still need to learn, but whoops. Okay, so that was our Overtone series that I was talking about. To recap that, we went up one note, we went up to our next note, which is the same note, we went up 5, C, E, G was our next note, okay, and then we went up our next, which was our C, E, G, which ended up creating a major chord. So in every single note that you're playing, I guess it's kind of cool to talk about now. See, that's why ADHD is a good thing, right? So we have a major chord, and we play any note, and there's a major chord in there. Bam, right there. And also in like the notes in a major chord, which I hear people talk about, like, oh, all these notes are in the major chord, so there's your major chord. But I think that the major chord, when you're playing it, is normally, I guess it just is all the notes that are contained in it. Whatever it is, you have a major chord in any note. So you play a note, boom, you have a major chord of harmonics in that note. So it's super interesting, and different instruments have a different elevation of certain notes. So in some notes, let's say your C will be like really, really strong. And in other ones, maybe your C will actually be really weak and your G will be really strong. So you won't hear that octave so much, but you hear the fifth more. And you get a reference of what an octave versus a fifth would be. If you had an octave, it would be more in unison. And then if you had a fifth, you'd have two different notes, okay? And it has a nice sound to it, So it's interesting. A lot of people say the reason why we use a lot of major scale when we're writing music, and for even doing like minor songs in minor, a lot of times we do certain things that we would do normally in major just to evoke certain sounds and stuff, because our ears, we tend to seem to, most people really like major scales, songs written in major chords, etc. So a lot of people correlate that with the Overtone series, and they say, well, every note has that major chord in it. So I find that really interesting. Another thing I find really interesting is how when you start thinking about this more with the Overtone series, you go, okay, well, every instrument can play the same note, but let's say I really like the sound of an electric guitar, and you think, why do I like that certain sound? And it's because of the Overtone series that it contains, and more like the timbre that it has, which is written like timbre, your timbre, or people call it like the color of an instrument, basically, of the sound. And it all has to do with that, the certain differences of the Overtone series, what level you're hearing the certain harmonics and stuff like that. So your favorite instruments are basically just different variations of using the same notes, but they have different amplitudes of those harmonics, and it gives a completely different sound each one. Very interesting stuff. So we have our BDF. Now let's talk about this again. We took a little break from it. Now let's go back to it. So we have any note, we have any chord, and we have a B or we have an E inside of it or in the beginning of it, then it's a minor. Okay? So BDF is a great one. Why is BDF a great one? Because BDF is the only note combination of just natural notes, no flats, no sharps, just B, D, and F. It's the only note combination that you can do like that, and it equals a diminished chord. Okay, what's a diminished chord? A diminished chord is where you have a minor and a minor. And how could I easily tell that? Well, we have a B there, and then we have a D there, and in the middle of D and F is an E. So already I can say, that's a minor, that's a minor. But I feel like teaching like that's not the best, so let's break it down a little more. Okay? Typing all the wrong things is hilarious. So we have B, C, D, E, F. So we can say, okay, after our B, we don't have a sharp. So instantly we can just say minor right there. And then we can count up D, and then we can go E. E doesn't have a sharp. So we can go minor. We can do that quick in our head just like that. And you can do that for any chord at all. So let's actually start on the E chord now. Let's go every good band. So let's do the circle of thirds again. Okay? Every good band deserves fans and cash. Okay? See, it's actually something that makes sense. It's true. So now let's take this. We have E, G, B. So we can already tell, okay, that's minor. Okay, we have G, B. We just have G, A, B. Okay, we can already tell that's major. So now we get to check. We can reference it. Let's say I have the C major scale basically with the chords on my wall, so I can look at it as a reference, and I can reference things. So I can go, okay, E, G, B, that's minor. I can go, okay, E, G, B. Okay, it's minor. That's a E minor chord. Correct. I got it correct. And it's good to, without thinking about it, in efficient ways to do it and then make sure. Do it, make sure. And you could also make sure by thinking, but then you're taking an extra step that you might need, but you know, if you already created it, then you got it. So now we created a minor chord just by looking at certain notes. Okay, let's look at F. Remember, on the middle notes of our treble line, we have FAC, like face. So you think F, you could instantly just think face, or you think fans and cash, or circle of thirds. It's good to have multiple ways of doing these things. So we have our FAC, our FAC. So if we so again, if we added our seventh, what would we have? So that's why it's also good to know different references. Okay, so we have our FAC, and let's actually make it a seventh. So how to use the circle of third to make seventh chords, and 9 chords, and then 11 chords, and then yada yada yada. Okay, so it's super easy. You basically just go up. You just go up it. So you have every good band deserves fans and cash. So let's write that out. So if you have every good band deserves fans and cash. So if you're 1, 3, 5, okay, yeah, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, okay. Then you have your 13, which is interesting because your 9 is actually the same thing as a flat, or as a 2, and then your 11 is the same thing if you look. Oh, I don't even have it there. Well, your 11 is the same thing as your 4. I was looking for it, and I'm like, okay, well, I wrote chords, so never mind. But basically, that's how you write your upper extension chords, and how you know them. Just like I want a 7th, and I already have, let's say you know your C chord. I have C, G. You just go 1 up from G. Good band. Okay, you already know the 7th. Bam. And then I love the circle of thirds because it's a good way to upper extensions, 7ths, whatever you need to do. 5ths, like I showed you, or maybe you want to write a 7 or whatever your heart desires. Okay? So let's do this. We have our, I guess I'll just call it FAC. So let's think real quick. Okay, so we have F, A, so we have F, G, A, okay, so we have a major. Okay, then we have A, B, C, okay, so we have a minor there. And then we have C, B, C, D, E. We end on the E. We don't have an E in the middle where we don't start on one. So since we end on one and the sharps are at the end, we again have a major. So F, A, C, E, that's our 7th right there. And that gives us our just F major 7. So it's a major 7 because we have a major at the end. If we had a minor at the end, it would not be a minor 7. It would just be a F7, known as a dominant 7. That might be a little confusing. Don't worry about it. Okay, so we talked about our Overtone Series. Talked about how there's every chord is in a note, which I find super interesting. Showed upper extensions, 7ths, stuff like that. Okay. Now, I think what's really interesting, let's talk about the history of notes and stuff like that. So how did we come here and just start creating, we have all this music now. Where did it start? Okay. Well, I've done some research. And from what I've researched, the basically beginning of music was people passing it on. So normally you'd have a student, like an apprentice and a teacher. And a lot of times it was through the church. And the church, you'd have the apprentice teaching the student songs and stuff like that. And through history, songs have a lot of history to them. Music does. One thing is that songs have been used to basically pass stories down through tradition. So you take a song, you take a story, and you make a song about it. And this is like, even in our modern day we have this. And now you can really remember that story really easily. 5 years from now, the song somehow helps us remember stories. And this was something they understood. So that was a lot of times what people would do is they would pass on certain stories through song. And also how a lot of song very first started in the very beginning was essentially it was monophonic. So it would just be one note at a time. Monophonic. Let's write down the things that I'm talking about, so I'm not explaining things, because not everyone likes looking things up. So monophonic means mono, one phonic sound, so one sound at a time. Like one singer sing at a time, one note playing at a time, ding, and that's it. Then you have your polyphonic or polyphony, which is, and I'll actually write polyphony, because that is multiple, I'll just say 2 or more sounds at a time. And this is with music. So when music started getting more complex, we had polyphony. But when it started, it was just all monophonic. So what they would do is a lot of times they would be in a church. They would have their church chants. And let's fast forward a little bit here. We're going to fast forward after we had just apprentice to teacher. And this started becoming something that your average person started practicing more, started becoming more of a practice that people would share the common knowledge about. So we're looking about 8th century here. And we're looking at churches, and we're looking at what was known as plain song, plain chant. It has a bunch of different names. Essentially, it was monophonic singing, and it started just with using the C major scale, and that's from there we created other notes. We created all the notes, and this is how we got no B sharp, no E sharp, and it was all from people singing, hearing things, and going, I like that, I don't like that, let's do this, let's not do that. Okay? And there's more to it, but that's kind of the basis of it. So we start with the C major scale. C major scale has a lot of history to it. It's commonly referred to as like the very first scale in the Western music here, at least that we have, because in the beginning we had the C major scale, and with the C major scale we would create modes with the C major scale. What is a mode? A mode is taking any note and any scale and starting from a different note. So we have different names for these modes, but essentially, if let's say we're going to number these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm glad that I did that. I forgot an A in there somehow. Wow. Okay. So we have our 8 notes there, which makes our octave, which makes our C major scale, which I love, no flats, no sharps. So then we're going to take those 8 notes and we're going to say, let's just say our 7th mode. Take our 7th mode. Okay, we'll go way over here, but it's already labeled, so it's easy. So take B. So all we do is we take B and we go up our scale. So we went up from B. So that is our 7th mode. And that's all that we did. So that's all that they did, is they would just take any scale, well, any scale. They would take the C major scale, that's all they had, and they would take any note from it, and they would use that as their starting point. And then from there, there's a few other things they did, but it gets a little more complex. So that's the basis of it. Then from there, they started basically creating more sounds. So it was the first sound that they made, different sound that they made. So as I was explaining with that B chord, this is where things get a little interesting. So we take all these notes. All these notes are all of our chords. Okay? So our C is our C chord, D chord, and how we build those chords is we just go from one, skip one, go to the next one, skip one, go to the next one. I explained this in the last video, but just a quick recap. And we use the circle of thirds to make that quicker. Just memorizing that phrase, but also it's good to understand what we're doing. Okay? So we have Cash Every Good, then we have Deserve Fans and, then we have Every Good Band, okay? Then we have Good Bands Deserve, and then we have and Cash Every, and then we have Bands Deserve Fans. Okay, C, D, E, C, I don't know. FAC. I'm tired, I'm sorry. This is like not the best day for me to do this, but I still want to do it. So, we're doing it. CG, DFA, EGB, FAC, GBD. Okay, so essentially all those notes now in chords, and all that we did was we went up from this, skipped every single one. Why is B the weird one? Because I was saying B is the only note that does not have just like major or minor. Okay, it's diminished. It's its own thing. Why is diminished such a weird thing? Well, it's because if we take out the third, what's lying? Well, first, if we don't take out the third, we just have our minor third and our minor third, and that's like when I was talking about numbers, and I was saying when you have your major or minor, you have your minor on top or your major on top of a third. So if you have your C, G, you have your major third, and then you have your minor third. Okay, that's good enough. So we have our major third, we have our minor third. I just show you how to do that quick, but I mean I already know that. So after a while you kind of just start memorizing these things. But major third, minor third. Take our next one, DFA. Okay, I was showing you, I mean D has E after it, so we could already just do that quickly in our head. And then F, G, A. Okay, so we have our minor third and we have our major third, right, one after another. So our major third is 4, our minor third is 3. 4 plus 3, 7. Either way, if it's a minor or a major, we're adding up to 7. What does this do? This makes it so if we delete that middle note, we're still going 7 from one note to the other note. So since this is 7 altogether, if we just went from D to A by itself, okay, and we didn't include the F in there, then we'd essentially have our 7 spaces still. We just wouldn't have that note in the middle. 7 from here to there, 7 from here to there. The 7 is a, so I was showing you it's the fifth, is known as a perfect fifth. Okay, so it's called a perfect fifth because it sounds really nice. And what happens is when you basically drop down from that perfect fifth, you get a diminished fifth. Okay, so a diminished fifth has a interesting sound, and it's known as something called a tritone. And I go over tritone in my last video more and what it actually is, so I'm not going to here, but it's the fact that it was a sound that the churches said, we don't like that. And as a matter of fact, they said, this is illegal. You cannot play this, you can't play B and then F because it creates that tritone. Let's hear B to F, okay? Okay, let's hear C to G, which was our first one. So C to G, that's like, yeah, like nice and happy. Then we go B to F. That's just like, like kind of confusing. It could be kind of haunting if you think about it in that context. It's definitely a little off-putting. And it's not like a happy, bouncy, feel good sound to me and most people. And church said, you can't play this, it's illegal. B to F, you can't do that, it's the tritone. And it's the tritone because what I was saying is when you go up from this, you just have minor third and you have your minor third, and that creates, if you get your knowledge of the minor third, which just has 3 plus 3 is 6. So now we have those 6 spaces. So when you have 6 spaces, you have a diminished fifth. Okay? So tritone, no good. They didn't like that. So what do they do to fix that? They said, well, we could create our a note here, basically. We could create that 7 spaces, okay? Is a good way to put it. So it's like, how do we create those 7 spaces? Well, if we just create that, F sharp, now we have a major third. Now we have a minor third, and then we have that major third. So now D and F sharp. Now we have a major third there. So F sharp. And interestingly enough, F sharp is our first in our circle of fifths. So if you look at C and you go up a fifth to the next key signature, you have G major, which has 1 sharp, which is F sharp. So we're looking at F sharp right here. And we're looking at the fact that if you have B, D, and F sharp, which is an alteration now to the scale, okay, now all of a sudden we don't have that sound. Okay, so we're creating sounds now, and what would happen is they would use now this scale. So now they'd use this new scale, and they wouldn't use both of them at the same time or in the same song. They would either use one or the other. So they'd have your C, D, E, F, G, A, B, or B flat. Or what am I saying? F or F sharp. Okay. You have your F or your F sharp. It's a live stream, but I taught it a little wrong. It's the same idea. Let me redo it. I'm so sorry. Hopefully this is funny. So we have BDF. The difference is that we did the flat instead. I could have taught it the other way because sharps, but that is just going against the actual history of it. So I can't do that. Well, the actual history of it is flats. So just grasp this, okay? We're gonna do this together. It's not hard at all. It's just that flat is the note right before the note. Okay? So we have B flat. That was our first one. So now we have our new scale. So we have our B flat, and now when we're making certain chords and stuff like that, now well, here's the thing: is we'd be doing monophony. We do monophony. I don't know. It'd be monophonic. There we go. We're doing one sound at a time. So when we're doing chords in that way, you'd normally think, well, you wouldn't be doing chords. Well, they'd still be singing notes in a pattern that would be a chord. So in that time, basically, a chord could also be looked at instead of how we normally look at it vertically, they would look at it more horizontally. So you'd have your C, E, G, for example, which is our chord normally. They would have it one note played after another. So they'd play a C, then they'd play an E, and then they'd play a G, and now you have your C chord horizontally. And this is with this is how they used to do it. This was their understanding. They didn't really understand the harmony and creating chords vertically. That just was not in their understanding, we believe, because they didn't use any of that yet. Okay, so we're taking B flat now. Let's say we're working with B flat, we're making chords, we're making all these chords and stuff like that, and then we're taking B flat, and then we're creating B flat, and so let's look at this. So our next one from here, if we look at our circle of fifths, circle of fifths, circle of fifths, will it get bigger? Circle of fifths. There we go. Okay, I'm actually going to copy it. Bear with me. I'm going to go into my paint. I'm going to exit this. I'm going to move this out of my camera so you can see me. There we go. Hello. And then we're going to go here. And then we're going to do this. And then we're going to do this. Now we're opened up here. And now I can, oh my golly, now I can exit this for a second so I can stretch this like a so. What? Okay. That's what it's going to give me. I'm actually going to save that real quick just so we can open it up, because that's actually bothering me now that I can't make it bigger, and I'm like, you know what, if I can spend an extra second to make it bigger, it's not gonna work. Perfect. Okay, that's life, right? Okay, so here we are. We're back at what I was talking about before. We have Overtone Series, we have circle of fifths. I was talking about if we're doing B flat now. So let's look at the circle of fifths. Okay, so we went C, and then if we go this way, we go to F. F has one flat in it. Okay? And it has B flat. Okay, I'll just teach you like that. If you want to know circle of fifths and you want to know the flat note that this is containing, you could look at what I was explaining when I was saying the circle of flats, which is your bead, greatest common factor. Okay? I like writing space in between them. Bead, greatest common factor. Okay, so that's what we're working with. We're working with our flats. So we're working with our order of flats. It's the order that the flats go in. It makes it an easy reference when you just remember the word B and you remember GCF. Okay, so we went down one, we went to our F. So our first flat that we had is our B, and look at that, we have a B flat there. And this was created through the church singing and saying, we don't like B to F, we need to create something different. So they created B flat. And then here's the thing, is we had E flat now. Okay? So if you go basically B, if you make a chord with B, you go B, D, F. Okay? That works. But the second when you get yeah, that's what I thought. When you do E, G, B, then all of a sudden you have the same problem again. So normally, if you're looking up here, let's look at how we were in the beginning. We were at A major. And A major, C major. We're looking at C major. C major had, this is what we have. So basically with this, we're going, okay, we don't have any flats. We don't have any sharps, and we're just looking at the order of flats in comparison to that. So if we look at our next one, we could just say E, okay? And then we could look at our order of flats, look at our next one, we go A, okay? So it's just adding on what we have, basically. Okay, I don't want to make this too complicated, but I want to touch on these things. and yeah, okay. So we go from B, and now we want to make our chord. And if we were normally making our chord, we'd have B, D, F, we'd have that sound we don't like. But if we have E, G, B, then we have the sound we do like. We have, it's a minor, but it's still, there's nothing wrong with it. I was saying the only natural, when we're talking about natural letter combinations, B, D, F is the only one. Natural means it doesn't have flat or sharp. The only combination that creates a sound that we don't like. But now we just created B flat, and when you flatten a note, you go right before it. So now if we create all these chords, blah, blah, we notice that E, G, B, every good band in our circle of thirds, used to be nice. But now we took that nice E, G, B, and we took at the very end of it, and we ruined it. No, I'm just kidding. We made it different. So we took the E, G, B, we did a B flat, we shrunk it by that little bit. So when we shrink it by that little bit, we go from a perfect fifth, which would be represented as a P5, to an aug fifth. Augmented fifth. I'm going to actually type it out. Augmented. Augmented 5. Okay? So you'd probably normally just write aug, but it's good to know these words, so I'll just write it out for now. So you have your augmented 5. Augmented 5 is from E to B flat, which is also known as a tritone, which is the sound you don't want. So now we're looking at this and we're like, oh, so now I got to change something else as well to make this a major or a minor, the sound that we like, that sound where you get the 4 and the 3, you get your 7. And from the note from E to B, you have that 7. Okay? What's the easiest way to do that? Well, if we just take the first note, E, and we flatten that, now we're going to take the crunched scale this way, which gave us a problem, and we're just going to bump it this way. So it's kind of like we just went one bump this way and one bump this way. So now we're at the same interval, but we're at, just bumped over a little bit. All that we're doing. So now, okay, so we go E flat. So now we're looking at our perfect fifth, and it's like, it's a good sound. Let's hear E flat and B flat. Okay? let's hear. Oh, okay, so yeah, let's do B flat, and then let's do it without the B flat. So then let's just do regular B. Okay. Yo, what am I thinking? Okay. That was weird. Yeah, well, that was the difference. Okay. Should I have explained it? I'll explain it this time. Okay. So, actually not. This is funny. I'm like kind of tired for this, but I still wanted to do this. So, we're still going through some good stuff here, and talk about the perfect fifth. We're talking about the history of music. So we went through E flat. So now we have a perfect fifth, and what do you know? Now we went down to our next cycle on the circle of fifths, but we're going down this side instead. So we're progressing down our flats. So our circle of flats, we have B, E, A. And what's interesting is you'll notice that each one of these will add on the previous one. What do I mean by that? Okay, so let's look here. We're looking at F, which has B flat. What's our next one? B flat. B flat has E flat. What's our next note? E flat, etc. Okay? Just these little things to help you understand it a little more. So now we go to E flat. So now we're going to shake our scale, and we're going to add E flat to it. What are we doing here? We're creating scales. So our last one, even though we're still, I'm writing it still starting from C, since we're adding these flats, I just created the F major scale in the last one, is what they started doing. So in the beginning I was saying, they'd only used modes. They'd take the C major scales, all they had, they'd rearrange it, create new patterns, create new ways to play that scale, get new sounds called modes. So, and the modes get interesting once you add those to our new scales we're making, okay? So, now our new scale that we're making, now we're doing B flat, okay? And that was this note. Okay, so we have our B flat, and now we have our E flat scale, okay? So we're in the key of E flat, and we're in the key of B flat, and because of that, we have these flats here, okay? So what happens when you start creating chords with these is you keep running into issues when you try to make chords with the new notes that we just made. Okay, so our next one is actually, if we go up at our A flat. So our A flat creates a problem when we go from A C E, because normally when you have A C E, if you think about it, if you think about the B being in there, you have a minor. So A, B, C, D, E. It's that relationship of major to minor to major. We have a minor triad. Okay. So what do we do with that now? We have A, C, E flat. Well, we're going to do the same exact thing, and we're going to keep doing that. And that's how we create all of the notes in our scale. Okay? So it's pretty interesting to me. We go E flat, we go A flat. And remember, this was all alterations of people singing and then saying, I don't like that sound, and I want to make that sound a little differently, so I'm going to do this alteration, or I'm going to do that alteration. I'm going to add this or that to it. Okay? So now we have the A sharp, A flat, and we have E flat. Okay? So that creates A flat, which is our E flat major scale. Okay, and look at our next one, which is interesting. Okay. Order of flats, we're still going to go there. Okay, so now we're looking at this, and we're looking at our A flat. Okay, so we had from C, went 1 flat, 2 flats, 3 flats, 4 flats. Okay? We have that. Now A flat, if you look at that, I should number these, because this is a little confusing here. It's all one off. But I wouldn't think about a one off, I would just memorize it. Okay, so we're at our fourth one. So you think fourth one, so we have D flat. Okay, so just take D flat, and that's how we're going to use our order of flats to fill in this. But essentially, that's what the churches, the original musicians, did to create every single one of these notes, is they just kept going up from there and doing the same exact thing. And what it left was no F flat and no C flat. And why did it leave no F flat and no C flat? Well, because when you go and you do all these things, now you can create any chord with this, and you won't have the problem to where you have that one random diminished chord which has the tritone in it, which is the sound that we don't like, the minor and minor thirds. So adding up to the 6. So there's that. Now we created every note that is known in our chromatic scale using those alterations. And how do we do that? Well, we started with the C major, and then we slowly added each one of these flat notes to it. And how many did we add? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is also a really interesting number in music, because 5 is penta. So you have your pentatonic scales, and you have a lot of things dealing with 5. And those flat notes, if you take all those flat notes, that is a pentatonic scale in itself. Very interesting. So 7 flats, or 5 flats, I mean, that's as far as you can go, because the other notes don't have flats. So why do they call it F flat, B sharp, Well, because they actually started, they said, let's write these out. So they had C, D flat, D, and they would say, D flat and D aren't different notes. They're different variations of each other. Okay? And that's what they started, and maybe that's not exactly what they said, but it was, of that context of these are basically different versions of these notes. So we have our D flat, our D, our G flat, and our G, and then we created our sharps from there, which is the vice versa. But from them just listening with their ears and adjusting everything, they created all these 12 notes. Now we know is our chromatic scale. Why is this so important? Why did I even talk about this? Well, all of our instruments are created from this major, from the chromatic scale. All of our music reading notes and everything, all of our music is built off of this. And all that comes from the Overtone series, essentially. Or it can. So it all kind of ties together, which is a really interesting thing. And there's a lot of connectedness in the music thing, which when you start connecting dots together, it really helps, because then things aren't so isolated. And it actually starts clicking all over the place. So that's how all of the notes of music were created, a little history lesson there. And then how the Overtones series can essentially actually get us all those notes if we keep going. But here's the interesting thing about the Overtones series. Let's talk about this some more. So Overtones series, essentially, I'm just going to use 10 Hertz as an example, because that's going to be really easy. Or maybe let's do 2. I'll do 2. So say our first note is 2 Hertz. So how we get our second note, which is known as an octave, is it's double the next amount of hertz. So what are hertz? Hertz is a measurement of a sine wave. A sine wave is just a wave that's doing that. Okay? It's going back and forth, it's creating a wave. That wave, there's a lot going on there, but if it's consistent, a consistent wave, it creates a pitch, creates a sound. We know a lot of these things, even if you just hear like a ringing sound, or beeping of a microwave beep or something, or music, note, anything. It's all a steady vibrating note, and you start bending a note, of course it's not gonna be so steady. But what does that have to do with? Okay, so if you don't have a steady note, you have a note that's doesn't have a steady hertz to it. That's like me just hitting, like doing a drum hit. It's like bam, or like me crashing something, crash, something like that. Like maybe you could maybe try to pick out some notes in there if you really get complicated and wrap your head in it. But that's just a sound. It's just a sound. But when we hear a note, what we're hearing is that steady vibration. What does that steady vibration comes from? It comes from something else that's vibrating steady. Okay, so let's take out a guitar. Take out a guitar, and we have a string that's vibrating. And that gives us a certain note. But when we hear that note, like I was saying, we hear all the other notes too. So you can visualize that. You get like a camera, and you look at the guitar string. A lot of people take the video. You'll notice not only is the string doing crazy stuff because it's a round string in a free space. So it's not just doing this. It's kind of doing like a circle vibration thing. But you'll notice that in certain places the waves will be a certain way, and certain ones will be closer together, and certain ones will be a lot closer. So the string's not vibrating consistently. If you look at it like in a camera, all the same throughout it. Okay? And that now, because it's doing that, is creating different vibrations in the air from all those vibrations on the string. So you have a vibrating object. Okay? Steady vibration, and it's emitting steady vibrating waves. And we hear this as pitch, as a note, as a steady note, in which we can call A sharp or whatever it is, and we can identify these pitches. Okay? So we take our 2 hertz, and this is not accurate, but this is a easy representation. So we're going to say 2 hertz is C. Okay? So this is the nature of the Overtone series, is you're going to take the last note from what you have, and you're going to add on top of it. So let's do that. You're gonna keep adding your 2 to it. Let's look at a visual of this. So we have the Overtone series. Leonard Bernstein does a really cool video on this. Okay. Okay, so here we are. We have our I'll look at the actual hertz to see if this should probably come up. So I'm looking at the Overtone series hertz. And it shows us this. Oh geez, sorry, I just can't find a good one right now. Give me a second, I'll find a good one. Oh, here we go. Okay, so as you can see, you get the initial number and you add it. So we have 55. This is accurate, is an A. A plus 55 is 110 hertz. That's another A. You add that 55 again, because what's going on here? You have your string is ringing, okay? But then there's also that initial ringing overlapping with what's happening next to it. So you have 55 hertz, and you have another 55 hertz, and then you have your 110 hertz, and you have your 55 hertz overlapping, and these are creating harmonies, but it's also creating more subdivisions. If that makes any sense. Probably is a really weird way to explain that. But basically, you're going to add each one of these on here because it's going to be intersecting in within it. And what's interesting is if you keep doing that, you get every single note that exists, and if you keep going, you have every single note that we don't use, and if you keep going, you have every note that we don't even know exists. So it's essentially, theoretically, infinite. Have we proven if it's infinite? Probably not. So it's just interesting. We can get all of the notes from one note, and with modern technology, we can do weird things like cut out some of those notes, cut out all of them and leave just the main one, or we can do weird things with modern day technology and with this knowledge of the Overtone series. Okay? How to use this in music? Excuse me. How to use this in music and knowledge of music, stuff like that? Well, you can think about it as multiple ways. But in one way, you can think about how strong the relation of harmonics are to certain things. So, and what this does. So if you have your 8, your 8 is a octave, going from, if you're going up diatonically, like in a major scale. Let's say you're going C major, you're just going C to C. So you have 8, that's an octave. Well, that's unison. And as I was showing, it's not really like the biggest difference of sound. So if you want to go up an octave on a guitar, you just play a fret, you go up 2 frets, and then you also go up 2 strings. So you play a note, you go down 2 strings, 2 frets, and you have an octave of a guitar. Okay, right there. And that is not really that different of a sound, or like on a piano. If you, it's not really that different. You know, it's unison, it's the same sound. But then the same thing with the fifth is the one next to it. The further you get away from it, the more distinct it is. But the closer you are, the less noticeable it is auditorily. So we're gonna look at the fifth now. We're gonna hear a fifth. Because our eighth is basically the same sound, but we hear a higher version, a lower version. And then our fifth, it sounds different, but it's honestly not the biggest difference. And I've heard this explained as the reason why, like let's say in the Bach, what am I thinking? The Baroque period. Okay? You'd oftentimes hear things like no parallel fourths. What am I saying? Scratch that. No parallel fifths, no parallel octaves, so no parallel eighths, no parallel fifths, and why? And the simple things a lot of people say, the devil or something. But actually when you look into the use of parallel eighths and parallel fifths, they don't sound as harmonious as other choices can. So if you have, like, let's say, like, yeah, I'll just say you have your, I'll just do that. I'll have a C and an E, and then I'll play another E above it, and then I'll do the fifth above it. Okay, and it's already way different, but now if I do the third above it, it's even more of a difference of notes. So it's an interesting thing. The further you get above the harmonic series, the more you keep progressing, the more that the notes sound distant apart, and they are, but it gives you that sound more. And that's one way you can use it. And yeah. So there's that. They call it the physics of sound. And this goes pretty far. So this goes into being able to turn any thing into an instrument, essentially, by understanding that it's the certain hertz that you have. And then by understanding timbre and stuff, maybe you could figure out how to create an instrument of your own sound that you like. And with modern day technology, we could really do cool things, like maybe create a whole new sound, which you can. There's certain programs where you can make your own timbre, and you can essentially create your own sounding instrument. So that's super cool. Okay, so let's talk about chord progressions. Chord progressions are basically things that are at the base level going to help you create a song. So how do we take simple knowledge of major scales and create chord progressions? You'd be surprised how unbelievably easy this is. So it's like creating a song where you go dun 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 dun, or anything, or you're hearing your favorite song, and it's not just the same thing, but it's going somewhere. Chord progressions. And I would explain it like this. Chord progressions are kind of like in music in general. Do what sounds good to you. You don't have to follow the rules. Some of the best music teaches us some things, and it's you don't. The rules of music aren't rules. They're They're trackers. You're keeping track of things. You're understanding things. You're identifying things. It's not like a rule that you have to follow. It's a rule you can follow if you want it to sound nice, typically, because typically music theory is built on this sounds good. Okay? So chord progressions, let's just do a major scale. Of course, we're going to do the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, back to C. And then if we have our chords, we're going to have our... And actually, I like to do some more spaces in between, because I'm realizing I'm doing my Roman numerals now. So I actually like to space these out a bit more, because I'm doing my Roman numerals. And with the Roman numerals, that's a way that you're identifying basically the quality of this chord, the function of this chord, and they call it the degree. Okay? Look at the degrees of all these chords. So first we have C, which is your I, and in the last video, I actually fully explain how, instead of just listening to me explain how 2 is a minor, and 3 is a minor, and 4 is a major, and 5 is a major, you can actually see me break down how I create the chords, which I kind of showed you in this a little bit, but I completely break it down, and then I also show how you know and how you can create this major 1, minor 2, 3, and yada yada yada, and how you can actually create that yourself. Any note, it's just a certain pattern. So then we also have our minor 6. Oh my gosh, I'm doing everything. Okay, 6. Then we have our 7. Diminished. Oh my gosh. Okay, so chord progressions. So we have our chords written out. how do we turn it into like a song? Okay, so common chord progression would be 1, 4, and 5, which if you take the note, that would just be. So already it's music, but the chords of those, so chord progression, let's say you'd start on C, and yeah, let's just do that. We're gonna go from C. We're gonna go from F, which is known to be like a predominant function. It sets you up. It can set you up to the dominant, which is the G. So we're gonna go C chord, which is C, G, F chord, which is, or we'll call it the circle of thirds. So we'll go C chord, which is cash every good. We'll do the F chord, which is fans deserve, or fans and cash. C. The F one always gets me. If you notice this last video too, the F always gets me for some reason. And then I think the face thing. So I think face, okay, FAC, okay, and then we're gonna do the G. Okay, so with that progression, basically, our C is gonna give us a feeling of this is where the song starts, and if we also end up there at the end, it's gonna give us a feeling of this is the end of the song if we do it right. And so we're gonna go C, we're gonna go F, and we're gonna go G. The C to F is gonna make us feel like, okay, we went from that grounded place of that song, and now we're kind of shifting somewhere else, and and then what comes after it sounds like, oh, that's exactly, sounded like it almost sounded like they set each other up basically. So you get your C to your F, which sounds like kind of sets up to the G, and then your G kind of sets you up to saying, okay, well, where do I want to go now? And if you do go back to the 1, it's like, wow, that sets it up to feeling back at home again. So let's recap that again. C goes to F, which is, we're looking at all, so let's look at our uppercase letters, all we're doing here. So we're looking at a major chord progression. So we're going 1, 4, 5, 1. So let's write that down. 1, 4, 5, 1. And this is like super simple. This is like the basic level of explaining chord progressions, and then from here you can get more complex, but you need to understand it on a basic level. So I have that line in the middle of this last one. That's known as a cadence. Just spell like that, cadence. A cadence is basically at the end of a song, it's a certain chord to another chord, and it gives it a certain sound, a feeling. So this cadence is known as the perfect cadence, and it's not just because it has the perfect fifth, because we also have a perfect fourth, I'll remind you. It's that it is a perfect relationship of the dominant to the tonic. Okay? Our 1 is our tonic, and our 5 is our dominant. So I'm just going to start it from where it starts. Okay, so tonic, dominant. I'm going to write that, so I talk about that in a second. Dominant function I'll talk about in a second, but let's talk about this chord progression a little more, and let's hear it. So when I go, I'll do the C, G, so 1, and I'll go to F, okay? And then I'll go G, and I'll go back to A. Okay, let's try that one more time. Okay, so just C, F, G, and then back at C. And this okay. How about I don't talk this time? Okay, now listen. Very simple, not the best song, but did you hear the sound that when I went back to that last note, it was, oh, it's the end of the song. So now let's do that where I just go 1, 4, and 5, and I don't end on the 1, and I was explaining how it kind of sounds like, is it the end of the song? So let's do that. 1, 4, 5. Well, is that it? You know, do you hear that? It sounds like I'm scratching my head. Is it gonna keep continuing? Let's do the 1 4 5 1 again, just to hear that difference now. Now that we've heard it where it's like is it ending? Now let's hear it again to where it sounds like it did end. So I'll do C, F. I'll write it. Why did I not write this down? I mean it's good just to know it, but you know, let's write this down. So we'll go C, F, G, and then back to C. So let's hear that, and we're doing our chords here. So we're doing our chords 1, 4, 5, and 1. Okay? So I did a little high C note at the end too, and it worked. It was like, oh yeah, that's totally the end of the song. So it's that's one kind of lesson to chord progressions is the cadence. It's the ending, because a lot of times if you familiarize yourself with this, and then you go out there and you start listening to all these songs and stuff, you realize a lot of songs don't have the best endings, and the songs that do, when you understand this, it's like, yes, they did it. They did that ending. It sounds like the end of the song. And it's also musical to not follow the rules and to do it a certain way. But sometimes you can tell, I don't think people understand the cadence and the sound that it provokes and the chord relationships that provoke this feeling. So a lot of times it's kind of like an unintentional and like I don't think they really know what they're doing. But to someone's ear who knows that sound, it's kind of like, that was like not the best ending. So that's how to create a good ending, is you understand your cadence and how you want to use it to create the ending that you want. You could also do a imperfect cadence, which would be literally ending on the 5. You could do like a plagal cadence, which would be like your 4 to your 1 instead of your 5 to your 1, which is basically just a softer, in my eyes, kind of just like a softer version, because your 4 kind of has like a predominant sort of still function. So you could still hear where that was the end of the song. I could at least, but it wasn't as strong as the G to the C, where it was a stronger sort of landing. That was sort of a softer landing, but it's still landing. So it's just a softer sort of landing, 4 to 1 plagal cadence. So that's a really interesting thing to know about chord progressions. Is, I mean, we're starting at the end, but it's a good thing to know. How do you end this thing that we created? How do we make it sound like, okay, it actually ended? What are some other things to know? I mean, well, just of course, thirds sound really good together, 2s sound really good together, and perfect fourths can be really harmonious and nice as well. So let's talk about chord progressions a little more. So when you're doing chord progressions of a song, you'd start on like C, E, G. Now let's just say I'll just play now notes that are centering around C, E, and G, but I'm going to play some other notes in the middle of that here and there. So I'm just going to really simply do a just C, E, G chord, and then highlight C, E, and G in my right hand. It's like, okay, that's like the same thing over and over. How do you make that not the same thing over and over? I need to sit down for this. How do you make that not the same thing over and over again to where it's just the same thing? And that's where you're doing chord changes. So you can just be in the same key and you're playing your C, actually open up my thing here. Whoa. Where'd I go? Where am I? Okay. Where'd I even put this thing? Everything's getting switched around. Okay. Can you see me? You can just see me if I do this. Okay. So it's what I was saying. So you C, G. Don't mind my piano playing, like I'm no master or anything, but I'm teaching some stuff. So we have C, E, G. Highlighting C, G right here. Whatever. Okay. So we're doing that, and then we're saying, now I want it to sound, different. And now, if we're doing a major chord progression, we could just go to F, or we could just go one over, and we could go to D. So C, D. And the difference is D is now a minor. Now we're doing some minor stuff. So if I simply go from C, and I play notes in that chord, and then I go from D, and I play the notes in the D chord, it works. And if I keep staying in the notes in the C chord, it won't work as well. So let's first play notes in the C chord. On my left hand, just play the C chord and kind of play notes. And then my right hand also center and focus on those notes. Also play the other notes. And then same thing with when it comes to D. Okay? So. You see, it works. Okay? So the piano is great because you can take any music, knowledge, theory, whatever, and you can look at it. You can look straight at your piano and you can just kind of see what you're doing. Okay? So let's do the chord progression of 1, then our 4, then our 5, then our 1. Since I'm not really good at piano, let's go really slow. Let's hear how it sounds, okay? Let's do something funny. I'll do a harpsichord. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, but do you see what was going on there? It went from the C, it went from the F, it went to the G, it went to the 1. They each had their own little sound to them, which affected what wanted to come next, and then what did come next, and then the feeling, and like the pleasure. Like, oh, like that was a cool, going from that to that sounded good, and then going from that to that sounded like resolved or something. Using the harpsichord sound, which I thought was kind of funny. So there's that. Now kind of just this again. What else could I I like how this is kind of going. Kind of just talk about some certain topics here. Oh, I want to talk about dominant function. Look at that. I wrote it down. Okay. So dominant function, what does that have to do with, what is that? Okay. What is that? Here we are. Dominant function. Why does it have dominant function? What does that mean? How do we know that it has dominant function so we can understand it? Okay, so dominant function actually comes from this note here, which is known as a leading tone. Why is it a leading tone? Our leading tone has some qualities to it. I'll keep it caps because it deserves to be cap. It's the leading tone. Or no. I like the leading tone because it makes sense when you call it that. Well, it's whatever. It makes sense either way. Leading tone. Leading tone. What's going on? Tone. Okay. Leading tone. This is the note that is the last note leading to the first note, and it's a half note difference. Let's explain it. Okay? So we have our last note is B, and then after that we have C. We know B doesn't have a sharp, so it goes straight to C. And we also know that if we take our pattern of whole, half, we get something a little bit like this. I like to write it kind of in the middle. So we have a whole, half, whole. Half takes us back to the beginning. Okay? That's our pattern. So if we look at B to C, half. Okay? We know that. There's multiple ways. I'm showing you there's multiple ways to reference to get you to think about this. So hopefully try to get it quick, because it's just nice to not think about this stuff too long, to get it up quick. Okay, so we have B and C. There's no B sharp, so B to C is that difference. Why to explain the half note, whole half thing? Because if we're in any other scale, which would have you could have a bunch of sharps, flats, who knows what, and make this all confusing for you. I'll make this all kind of funny. Okay, so I should probably open it more like this. That's kind of weird. Okay, so whoops. So we have there we go. We have our dominant function B to C because it has that half note difference. Any other note plugged into the major scale would again have that same half note difference, which would then create the leading tone. Okay, now I need to adjust this a little bit. So the leading tone tells us to go back to that one, tells us to go back home. So that's why the dominant chord has such a strong function of telling us we're going back home. You know, I said the perfect cadence is that perfect relationship of the dominant to the tonic. So it's telling us, let's go back home. It's telling us, let's go back home, because that's what this note's doing. It's going B to C. It's just going. Oh, now we're in harpsichord. So B to C, you see? Instead of like C to D. Okay, never mind. Okay. So because of that, it's a half note difference. It's a half step away from the other one. It's the closest that the notes could be in our chromatic scale that we use. So it's the closest they can essentially be with being different notes that are apart from each other. So it has a very close sound. It's one to the next one. Okay? And that is the leading tone because it leads us back to the C. So our last note is always the leading tone. And the interesting thing is I was showing you how all these notes create all the chords. So our G contains the leading tone as the third. Okay? GBD. So because it contains the leading tone in there, it has that lead tone function, and it gives it that dominant function. And also our 7 has a dominant function, and now you can probably see why. Okay? what else? I guess just the main thing is. Guess I could just delete that. The main thing is, just do what you want with this. Like, a lot of people will tell you, like, if you're doing music, to do things a certain way or this or that, which is cool. But I think anyone who's focusing on music should just do whatever the heck they want. Learn whatever they want or play whatever they want. If someone doesn't want to learn anything and they just want to play, so be it. If someone doesn't want to play and they just want to learn, so be it. I think everyone should kind of do what interests them, because how do you actually keep doing something every day? Well, you become interested in it, and that's what we're doing here. Is what I'm doing here. Is I'm talking about things that are interesting to me. So we have chord progressions, and chord progressions, like I was saying, you kind of do what you want with them. So you could do essentially any chord progression that you want, but it's good to know the relationship and the function of chords, chord functions. So then you can know what to do with those chord progressions. Okay? I feel like there's more I could talk about. Let me look at my I have stuff on my wall. I guess I could just talk about this. I want to talk about this. I've kind of wanted to. So, modes. Let's talk about modes. Modes are a weird topic that everyone I don't know. It seems like people think it's really confusing or something, but it's really easy. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about modes. Let's talk about modes of the C major scale, which we seem to be obsessed with. Okay? So we have... Oh, how did I do that? I know how. Okay. So, C, D, E... Oh my god, I'm doing everything wrong. Hilarious. Amazing. Okay. Here we go. C major scale. We have some certain modes here. I guess I will just label the first one as Ionian, because the first one is Ionian. So the first one, we have Ionian. I guess I'll just think the second one's Dorian. So Dorian is starting from the D. I'll go to that in a second. So we have Ionian, we have Dorian, then we have Phrygian. Oh my gosh, I keep forgetting to look at my caps lock. It's hilarious. Phrygian. Okay. Then we have Lydian. Then we have Mixolydian. Then we have Aeolian. And then we have Locrian. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 is a magic number. Okay. It's just, you see it a lot in music. Let's bump this out a little bit more. Boom, 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 boom. So we can bump everything out to the boom. So now let's create all these modes. And of course, like how we love our C major. So there's no flats, no sharps. So all we do is we get our any note and we rearrange it starting on. So yeah, this one we start in our first note. This one we start in our second note. This one we start in our third note. This one we start in our fourth note. This one we start in our fifth note. You know, okay? What do I mean by the fifth note, fourth note, third note, and yada yada? I mean that if we label this, a lot of teachers just really haven't explained this stuff in depth, so I had to really think about this stuff. Now I'm like, I just want to explain this stuff to people, make it easier. Okay, so we have, starting on our third note, which is E. So we're just doing that. We're just starting on, we take a scale, and our first note is our Ionian, fourth note is our Lydian, you see, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So, write those all out, and then I'll explain why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because this is a way to really get yourself to understand this. Okay? So I already know that is that. I'm actually going to write on the bottom. I could have just been copy and paste, but there we go. Okay, so we have that on the bottom now. Now on the top, we are going to write our whole half pattern. Okay? So what happens here? Let's look at what happens when we create modes with our whole half pattern. We start with whole. Yeah, I'll write it here. So this makes sense. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and then half brings us back to the beginning. Well, what happens when we go to our second mode? Well, we started on our second letter. So we start the pattern from here. Another way to look at it is we take our first note and we bring it to the back. See, this note goes back there. So now we have whole half. This is how we start. So now we have whole, half, whole, 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 half, and then we have that whole at the end, which that whole takes us back to the beginning. Okay? Now we're doing the same thing. We're just gonna go down it. So now we have half. So now you think, okay, now we already did our whole. Now we're starting on our half. So you just think the major scale after that first half. You think half. Okay, now we have three wholes. Whole, whole, whole. What do we have after our three wholes? Okay, we have just a half, which brings us back to our other two wholes again. Okay, so easy way to remember it. Our next one's now gonna start in our three wholes because it's gonna be 1 over. So now we're going to go whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half. Hey, look, we have a half bringing us back to the beginning again. And a good way to double check that is E is a half step away from F. Perfect. Okay, let's double check it again. D is a whole step away from E. C, whole step away from D. Perfect. Okay, so it all checks out. Everything's looking good. So let's continue this. We just did 3. And that was our pattern of 3. Okay, so now we have 2 of those pattern of 3. And we're just going to keep that in our mind. And then we have another pattern of 2, which then has our half, which then starts at that 3 that we left off in the beginning. Okay, there we go. Then we go to Aeolian. This is where things get interesting. Because now we have a pattern of whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. What does that look like to you? It looks like the first one, but backwards. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. I read it backwards that time. Okay? That's actually incorrect. That's funny. Okay. That actually was not backwards. So, my bad on that. I think it's this one that is. Yeah. Actually, it's not. Which one is backwards? Jeez, now I'm wondering. Okay, which one is half, whole, 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 half, whole, half, whole. Oh, okay, so Phrygian. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. That's funny. That's just funny. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole, whole brings us back to the beginning. Okay? So let's double check that. We could double check it like E to F, half step, that checks off. F to G, whole step, that checks off. E to F, we have the half step there. E to F, we have the half step there. B to C, we have the half step. I'm not even showing what I'm explaining, I'm sorry. B to C, we have that half step. Check. D to E, whole step. Okay, little things to check. Let's just do B's for now. Okay? So we have B to C, half. Whenever you have B or E to something, because the letters we're using, we're going to have a half. So E to F, half. E to F, half. Okay, so we're checking it off. Oh, it looks good. And I even have it written on my wall from another time before, which I double, triple checked everything. And everything looks good. Okay, so now we are understanding our modes a little more. So we are taking their second letter, and because of that, we're creating a different intervallic relationship between each of the notes, and that creates a different sound. Our major scale is whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, and we know that major scale sound. Okay? We know that sound. When we start doing other things, it definitely does sound different. Okay? Still sort of the same sort of sound, but different. Well, there's a mode. Okay? It's a C mode, C major mode. So it still sounded a lot like C major. Well, it's the third mode of C major, but it's also E Phrygian. So why do I say it's the C major mode, it's E Phrygian? Well, let's break this down. It's really simple. So we have Ionian. What's the note? C. Okay? So that's C Ionian. Where should I write this? I guess I'll write it after those. Okay, so I have a C Ionian. Okay? And that's because that's this note. Our next one starts on the second note. So it's D Dorian. Do you see? If it was D sharp here, it would also be D sharp here, and this would be D sharp Dorian. But we don't have any sharps, we don't have any flats. We're just starting on that second note. Our second mode. Our second note becomes the name of that second mode, D Dorian. I'm just calling it Dorian D, so you could see it's the relationship. Our Phrygian, well, what do you think that is? E, because that's the note we're using. We're doing E Phrygian. But E Phrygian is a mode of C major. So as you see, it uses the same exact notes. You're just starting and ending on a different one. And then here's where things get really interesting. Here you have your F, but then things get interesting when you look at your next one. Oops. I should write that. There. Your next one. So Aeolian. Aeolian is also known as minor. That's another name that people normally call it. So when people say, "Oh, that's a minor scale," or you're in C minor, let's say, that is a same thing as saying, let's say you're in D sharp major. I don't want to be too complicated, but that would let's explain it like this. This is way easier. That's why I'm using the C major. 1 second. Okay. I feel like a grandpa sometimes with this shit. Jeez. Okay. So B. I feel like it's when I need to get better on camera, because when I'm like by myself, I feel like I'm like quicker. It's gonna get better. So I have Aeolian A. So we have C major, and C major has the relative minor of A because it's the same notes in a different order. But if you listen to A, B, C, D, E, F, G It definitely is a different sound. Okay? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, now let's hear C. Well, they sound very similar. But the second one sounded, to me, more upscale, happier, and that's your C major. So when you actually are writing more pieces with minor, or like a song, you hear the minor quality more. And also when you are writing in your Ionian. So what's with all the other ones? Well, the other ones are interesting because when you start looking at the notes that are there and basically what those notes are doing, if we made all of these notes C. Okay, so right now we did what we do with the mode normally, but to really also figure out our modes, imagine if we took the letter C and made each one of these a C. What would happen then? These are known as parallel modes. They're parallel because they share the same first note. Okay? So I'll take the same. I guess I'll just do this. I'll just kind of think as I do it. Because I still kind of want to keep that there. So I'll just erase the... Yeah. I'll just erase all this. Okay. So let's erase this, and then let's make these parallel modes with C. And then when we make it parallel modes with C, we're going to see the notes that are flat and the notes that are sharp, and we're going to compare it to our major and our minor versions of that original mode, and we're going to see, okay, what's the sort of similarities between these other ones and let's say a major or let's say a minor. So we could maybe say, oh, this looks a little like it has a little more major functionality to it or characteristic. This one looks like it has a little more minor, so let's get into that. First, I like to align everything up here, so that's what I'm doing. Taking everything, lined up. Okay. I lined it up just to delete it, but it's fine because now I know where to put it. Okay. So we have C, 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 you see, you see, you see, do you see, do you see, you see, I see, do you see. Okay, we have a lot of C's. Everyone sees, everyone gets a C, 2 for 1. Okay. Something's very wrong. Okay. There we go. Okay, now we have C, now we have C Dorian. Okay. Now for these, let's just get this. Let's just copy that. And now let's just paste that. You just do Control C and Control V. Control C is copy, Control V is paste, Control P is not paste, Control P is print. So just remember that if you don't already. Okay. Boom ba boom ba boom ba boom ba boom ba boom boom. Boom ba doom ba doom ba doom ba doom ba doom doom doom. Okay. Now we have this. Now we know Aeolian minor. Okay? I guess I'll explain it differently. Okay. So let's go first. I kind of want to start with Mixolydian. I don't want to go out of order. I'll just start with the qualities of each one. Okay, so Dorian, let's actually... Yeah. So Dorian is flat 3, flat 7. Okay? Then we have Phrygian, which is flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7. Okay, so we have 2, 3, 6, and 7. I did 5, 6, and 7. Whoops. One extra 1. Then we have our Lydian, which has a sharp 4. And then we have our Mixolydian, which has a flat 7. I'm going to talk about the importance of these in a sec. So then we have our Aeolian, which has our flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7. Okay, then we have our Locrian, which has our flat 2, flat 3, flat 5, flat 6, and flat 7. Okay, so it's just not the flat 2 and flat 4. Okie dokie. Oh, oops. I had a feeling that was that. It's not the 1 or the 4. Okay? The 1 or the 4 does not get a flat. That is your formula for creating your modes. So you take any scale, essentially, any major scale. So we had C major. And you take any of those major scales and you apply this formula to it. So for anyone, I don't know if anyone's going to take a screenshot of this or anything, but if they are, that would really help if I labeled this. So that's what I'll do here. So I'll do a flat 3 and 7. Above that, I'll give myself a little more space here. Okay, good. I'll do that for each one when I get there. Okay, so now we have our flat 2, 3, 6, 7. Okay, 2, 3, 6, 7. Now our next one, we have our sharp 4. Now we have our flat 7. Bump-a-dump-a-dump. Then we have a flat 3, 6, and 7, which is, remember earlier we were saying the thing about flattening our third of any major scale and creating that melodic minor scale. I don't know if that's ringing any bells or creating any association here. But hey, look, we have that scale here to where we have our 3 flats. Okay? Okay, so we have our yeah, why don't we? Okay, so our flat 3, 6, and 7. When you look at our flat 3, 6, and our 7, remember earlier we had our notes in that melodic minor scale, and then we had our major scale, and our major scale had our sharp 3, 6, and 7, and we flattened one of them. We did melodic. What does that have to do with this? It's interesting. Am I even in the shot anymore? That is funny. So that's another thing about this Music Monday thing. It's a chance for me to post a video about music, even if I'm not 100% like in the mood, and if you know, and if it's not the best, and if it's not the most serious. But am I still going to teach a bunch of stuff? Yeah, so get a pen and get ready to write, because I'll go over some good stuff here. Okay. Locrian. We have a flat 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. And you can reassure that in your brain by saying, remember saying there was no flat 1 or flat 4. I don't see flat 1 or 4. Boom. Reassured. Okay. So now we're going to compare this with a major scale and see what we have in a minor scale. So our major scale is simply our Ionian, and then our minor scale is simply our Aeolian to a simple degree. So let's just keep it at that and not complicate things. Okay? So major, minor. Everything else is a different mode. So isn't that kind of interesting? We have history of using modes throughout music, creating music with these modes, and creating new sort of scales we can use with these modes. We've been doing it for a while, but the whole thing is, once you start kind of plugging in the other scales we created, how we created those other notes, which created all the other scales, when you start plugging in other things to these notes, it's really interesting, and then you start to kind of hear the function of them a little more. So let's talk about the major scale being whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half. Okay, but let's break it down to what we did here till we had our flat, sharp, blah, blah. So our Ionian has no flats and no sharps. Our Mixolydian has a flat 7. So remember what I was saying is that flat 7 is a leading tone. You have a major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. B is a half step, there's no B sharp, away from C. That's your leading tone. So now we got rid of that leading tone. We left a little bit of a bigger gap, that's it. So now it's just like 2 steps to get to the next one. But doing that, we got rid of some of that function there. And we got rid of that dominant function there in the terms of the third having the dominant function and this chord having dominant function as a triad. So it's a lot of times people consider it like I've heard it called dad rock before, because a lot of like dad rock music uses Mixolydian scales, because I think one reason that I've heard, and it makes sense, is when you hear the major scale a lot, it's like it just makes you happy. And it can do that to a degree to where it doesn't sound genuine. And this is kind of my twist on it, is the major scale can sound so happy, it can sound kind of non-genuine or fake happy or not in the right context or too happy. Any of those or all of them is what the major scale can be. So Mixolydian gets rid of just the leading tone, which also gets rid of some of the dominant function. And with that, you kind of have a little I wouldn't say it's a step down from how happy it is. It's not as jumpy as a scale. So you get to cool down a little bit more, and you can still create that rock and roll music without it being overly optimistic sounding or kind of fake happy. So there's that. Then we go to Lydian, which is a sharp 4. And this is interesting because sharp 4 actually gives you an augmented fourth, which now you have a tritone. But that's getting a little more complex with it. But I'll just throw that there. So you look at Lydian and you have that tritone, so that's some interesting function. But when you actually look at let's say Phrygian. If you look at Phrygian, let's say, actually let's go up smaller from there. Okay, so we did our flat 7, and now let's look at Dorian. Dorian has our flat 3 and our flat 7. So we look at our whole half pattern. Dorian has a whole half, whole half, whole. Okay, now let's compare that to minor. Minor has whole half, whole half, whole. Okay, so it's has some similarities there. Major, whole half. Okay, and then whole half, whole. So you can kind of start to see a little bit of some similarities between these and the differences, which kind of show you where they are musically, where they sit musically, and so on. So then you start to see where if you go to our minor, so our minor has a flat 3, 6, and 7. Okay, so now let's kind of look at similarities between that. Our Dorn, which we just talked about, has a flat 3 and flat 7. So in terms of a minor, that's just a one note difference. Okay? If we take that one note difference and we turn it up a notch, it's also a one note difference if we look at Phrygian. Because Phrygian has an extra 2 in there. So you have your flat 2, 3, 6, and 7. While your minor just has 3, 6, and 7. So Phrygian has an extra flat in there, which, as you can imagine, has that extra flat sound. So it's maybe could even be a step past Aeolian and have a darker sort of sound to it. Okay? And actually, yeah. Okay. Then look at Locrian. Locrian has a 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. So it's like, whoa, that's a whole lot. And I've heard it's typically pretty hard to create music with Locrian because of its nature. And when you look at its pattern, you have a whole, half, whole, half, whole. But a lot of people have voiced that it's not the easiest to make music with because it's an odd nature and an odd sound to it, and you have some odd things going on there. But there's that. That's the modes, drawing out the whole, half patterns, and then also drawing out what we have in terms of flats and sharps, comparing it to major, and saying, okay, what do we have here? Like Lydian, we have that sharp 4 compared to major, which doesn't have sharp anything. So it's like, okay, what does that do? Well, that makes it from, let's say, here to here, that's now bigger, but now from here to here is smaller. So you got to keep that in context. It's not always making, it has an extra sharp in there, so it's not always making it bigger. It's also making certain things smaller, away from each other, and with a different sort of sound. So there's that. Modes are a really interesting thing to know. Parallel modes go along with a lot of things. With parallel modes, you can do what's known as borrowed chords, and you can also do modulating to parallel modes, basically parallel keys. And there's a lot to this. I think borrowed chords is a really good one. I guess I could just talk about that with the parallel. What we have here is we have our parallel modes, and then what scale they come from. This, I guess, where things kind of start getting interesting. So if we have I keep saying that too, it's funny. So if we have a, oops, untypable character. I'm actually going to sit down. I've been standing up this whole time. Let me sit down. Whoa. This looks kind of funny. Okay, here we go. Okay. So now we're in mode land, and we've been in major land, and we haven't really gone to minor land so much. And we're basing everything off major here, and we're talking about major a lot, and we are getting minor, but we're getting minor from our major. So what we're doing is we're in major land. We are focusing on the major scale, major everything. not major everything, but we're basing everything off this major scale, and that's getting us to understand everything else we're doing. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about. This video didn't really have an organized direction, so I feel like I want to keep talking about modes a bit more though. So I could talk about the borrowed chords. If you're going into a song you want to borrow a chord, so let's think. Because things could get really messy real quick. I just start explaining random stuff. It could take a while. Let's do this. Let's just start writing some more on this piece here, which I kind of was doing earlier, and then kind of just didn't end up doing it. Why does it keep doing this to me? Very odd. Okay. Here we go. So what do we end with? Bum 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 bum. Listen to more. Okay. And as I was showing you, we had that G sharp right here, and then we have our E. Okay, that's already, I guess, big enough. B and D. Yeah, so G, V, D. We have our G sharp chord, which we look at it and we say, ooh, we actually are doing our diminished chord. Let me look at what I'm doing here. Okay, we're good. We're good. I'll go right there. We're good. Kinda. Well, I guess that's what I need. Okay, so we're doing all this stuff. We did a G flat, or G sharp chord, and with that we had our diminished, which gave us that sound, which is our triad, which in context it wasn't that bad in this context. Okay, dun 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 dun. I want something like slower now. Because that was the 7. Dun 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 dun. And that is kind of giving us dominant function. So I almost want to do like a 5 5 7 1. Like bum 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 bum, because we went dun 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 dun. So I could do E, G sharp, B. Okay, how am I gonna build that? I'll do the E on the bass, and I'll do more like an E. I'll do that E. Okay, so we'll do an E there, and then we'll do G sharp and B, which it's not gonna do G sharp first. But I actually want that G, that B, and then I want this G to be G sharp. And then I was wondering recently, I go, can you just like copy stuff and paste it? And yeah, you can. You can just copy and paste. So that's super cool finding that out. You know, that's easy there. But so we have that. How does that sound? Let's see. We have our dun dun. We could make like a super chord, I guess. We could actually, with our E, go down there. Let's see what happens here if we do this. And then I'll just make my G's sharp. And it turns that one natural. So you got to make sure there's nothing different there, because this one's telling this one to be sharp. When you sharp a note, it's known as an accidental. And the accidental carries on for this whole measure. This is in writing music, and because of this, they added this in this program. So I added a sharp. Now it's telling this whole bar until the end of this bar line, this whole measure is going to be any G sharp in this pitch is going to be sharp. If I had a G sharp up here, it would not be. In the beginning of the time signature, it's a different story, but I'm talking about accidentals, and we're talking about accidental random sharps, flats, naturals that we add throughout the piece that are not in the key that we're playing in, or as an alteration of the key. Like here we have our harmonic minor, but as you can see, we're adding that because it's not in the key signature. It's known as an accidental. It's not inside of the key signature, and it carries on. Okay, there's enough of that. Now I'm going to go into here, and I'm going to what happens if I just add it goes way up there. Okay, so I can just manually add it like that. So what happens if I do 2 chords stacked on top? That's pretty powerful. Dominant. Okay, so dominant, and then I'm gonna do the G sharp B D. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same sort of ordeal here. So B, not that B. Okay, well I'll just do this. I was doing a half note too. Okay, so we're doing a quarter note, and then we're gonna be building a G sharp B D. Whoa. Oh, why did I do that? Okay, I see. Okay, so G sharp, B, D, and good because I already wrote G sharp in this line. Now this is also G sharp without me doing anything. So if I did get this G sharp and I made it it was showing as a natural, so my natural would actually be one step below this. That's not what we want. We want it to be at our G sharp. Okay. So then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do our G sharp intersecting with perfect. With the other one, we're going to do a B and a D. So a GBD chord, a G sharp diminished chord. Bum, bum, bum. And then on my third beat of this, I'm going to do a half note. Bum, bum, bum. You're going to pause. Third beat of this next measure, I'm going to have a half note. And that half note is going to be a first inversion C7. Okay, so C7, we're going to use our circle of thirds. So I have cash every good band. Okay, so we have C, E, G, B. if it's the first inversion, we're going to have C at the end. So C, E, G, B, D. We're going to have E, G, B as the beginning. Actually, I wanted to... Okay. I want it over here. I want it over here. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so... Okay, so we have our E there. And a good way to double check that you have an E is, okay, so I have a B or E, we don't have a sharp, so if we go up one, it goes up to the next note. This does have a sharp, so if we go up one, now it's sharp. Okay, very easy. Okay, so we have our B there, and then from our B, I'm going to do B, D, F up here. Oops, B, D, F, and then a C above it all. But you see how this is going up to here, and this is going up to here. So that's what this wants to do. I should have already seen that. But musically wise, this is going dun dun dun. So if I go dun dun dun, it's kind of going to be contradictory, which could sound cool musically, or it could just be kind of bad. So good. It's not letting me type it. Good. Okay, and another thing good to know. Our first line is E. So our first space here is E. So our first line and our last space are the same. And same with our first space and our last line. And then you can go up from there and think other stuff. So we go, our first is our E, our last space is our E, our first space is our F, and our last line, because they're different, first space, last line, last space. So first space, F. Last line, F. Okay? Just little things to remember. So if I'm an F here, that's G. Okay. We have B, we have C. Because what we did was C, E, G, B. Cache every good band. We did the inversion. So we have every good band. And then cache. Okay? So how's that? Dun 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 dun. Does it want to? It doesn't want to be on the 3 at all. It's gonna be on the 2 maybe? Is it just because the inversion sounds kind of weird and it's an inverted 7th? If I do C, E, and then up here I do... Holy moly. Okay, then here, I'll just do C, G. I don't like that. It's funny. I love when I do something, I take time, and then I end up deleting it. Bye. Okay. No more of that. Done. If I did a low A on the 1, that's good enough. And then here, should I just do this? If I break it up, what if I do A, C? Come on then. Okay, A, C. Whoa. E, right there. And then I do E, and then I do G. So it's like a 7th that has a gap in the middle. See, something just is like too like, it's like a wall of crashing sound that I don't like. So done. So there needs to be some sort of transitionary period here. I'm trying to figure out what to do. Oh, what am I thinking? I already had the I had the chord on the bottom, chord on the top. So I want to do the same thing, but instead of being higher up like that, would it be too low if I didn't do that? I don't know. Let's see. Let's just do AC. How it's gonna be. Ascending. Let's see how that sounds. That's exactly the sound that I want. Okay. Done. ACE also modulates us back, if we want, using our 7, why do I write 7 there? Oh, I wrote 6. I'm just reading it wrong. Haha. So our ACE, all cash every, brings us back to our major if we want, brings us to our minor. It is a, those are the same chords in both scales. They have the same chords. So let's use that to our advantage. Let's go back to major now, and let's start doing some happier jingles. So we're on ACE, and that was our last. Basically, we finished on a cadence, which was our 7 to our 1. Okay? It's not perfect. Actually, is there a name for this? Let's see. 6 to 1, 7 to 1. There is a name for it, and I don't know what it is, and I don't have it written down. There it is. So, we went from our dominant to our tonic in our minor. But our tonic in our minor, because it's the sixth mode, is also our sixth of our major. So now we're in our sixth of our major. You know, maybe I just go back to the 5 again and then go back to the 1 again. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. But then from our 1, I want to go straight to the 3. Yeah. Okay. So let's sound it. Here's. Should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? Okay. I think if I just do like a cool line that uses GBD. What do I want? I'll just do that then. Okay. So I'll do a G, and then I'll do a B, which then I'll turn into an 8th note, which then will ascend to I knew it. Okay. So my golly. Okay, there we go. We did a B and a C. Perfect. So we did G down here. We went up a 3rd, but we did on this line. And actually, I'm picturing something a little different. I'm picturing like. I'm gonna dot that. And then I'm gonna dot that. Dotted. So now it is a half longer. Then on this beat, I'll pick up a nice melodic sort of thing. So G, B, D. I can just do D, F. Okay. Or I could just do that. Yeah. what I do here. Okay, yeah, let's just look at it. So here I did I guess that lines up. Let's think. We have a quarter note, we have an eighth note, so we have that, and we have a half plus an eighth. There's definite difference. Okay, so I guess starting here, I'm going to have because I have B, D, F. Actually, I have B, D, E, F. So B, D, E, F. And I guess I would be more like D. Yeah. If I just do that. I have no idea. Well, I feel like I'm kind of tired for this, but I tried. Goodbye. Then no one who's watching. I hope you have a good night. I hope the bed bugs don't bite.